The brooch was pinned inside her own vest. She never put it there. Mireille Sutton smooths the emerald green vest of a supervisor and checks the gala floor one last time. She is a black American woman, 29, sharp, precise, trusted with every detail of the Kang mansion's biggest night. Her marriage to the man who owns that mansion is still a secret. Kang Min-jae, they call him Snow Wolf. A dark dragon runs down the left side of his neck, from his ear until it vanishes under his collar. His suit is worth more than her year. His mother wears the golden heron brooch like a crown. Then the brooch is gone. Sun-hee announces the theft to the whole room. A quiet search, a polite suggestion, and the golden heron turns up glinting against Mireille's emerald vest, in front of everyone. Thief. The word lands hard. The police are one call away. Min-jae stops them, but he does not defend her. He asks for a few hours to handle it inside the family. A few hours. From the man who married her. She slides the gold ring off her finger. She walks out, and then she finds something in a laundry cart that nobody was ever meant to hear. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Mireille counted the chairs a third time and came up one short. 240. The seating chart said 240. 1. She walked the length of the ballroom with the clipboard against her hip, past the round tables dressed in ivory linen, past the florists still wiring white orchids into the centerpieces, and found the gap at table 9. One chair missing, she marked it and kept moving. The gala started in 6 hours. Nothing in this room was allowed to be wrong. Raphael, she called. He looked up from the base of a tower of champagne coupes, screwdriver in hand. The service elevator behind him had jammed twice that morning, and he'd been fighting it since dawn. Table 9 needs a chair. The gold back, not the cream. On it. And the elevator? He wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist. Running. For now. For now isn't tonight. She softened it with a look. Get it to always. He grinned and went. Across the room, a florist dropped a spray of orchids and swore in Spanish. Mireille was there before the stems hit the floor, kneeling, gathering them, checking each bloom for a bruise. 3 were crushed. She set them aside and stood. Pull 3 from the overflow, she said. Table 14. Nobody sits there till 9. The light's better by then anyway. The florist stared. Go. It's fine. Flowers break. That's why we ordered extra. She said it easy, but she'd ordered the extra herself, 3 weeks ago, over the objection of the events coordinator who'd wanted to save the money. She had learned to build slack into everything, because in this house the smallest failure had a way of climbing the walls until it reached the top floor and came back down with someone's name attached. Usually a name from the basement. Usually a name like hers. Mireille pressed her palm flat against the clipboard and breathed once, slow. The emerald vest of her uniform sat trim across her shoulders, the marfil blouse beneath it crisp, the black trousers pressed to a line. She had dressed at 4 that morning in the dark of a borrowed staff room so she wouldn't wake anyone. She looked like a woman who belonged here. That was the point. That was the whole point. Loretta appeared at her elbow with a tablet and 2 cups of coffee. Drink one, Loretta said. You've been vertical since God was a boy. I'm fine. You're gray. Mireille took the cup. The coffee was strong, and she drank half of it standing there, watching a waiter fold a napkin into a shape that was almost right and not quite. She set the cup down, crossed the floor, and refolded it in 4 seconds without a word. The waiter watched her hands and copied them. She moved on. Loretta fell into step beside her. The Kang matriarch's people called. She wants the receiving line moved to the East Gallery. The East Gallery has bad light. She wants the East Gallery. Mireille stopped. Through the tall windows, the winter morning lay flat and colorless over the grounds. The fountains shut off for the season, the hedges clipped to hard edges. Somewhere above her, in the private wing of this house, Park Sun-hee was choosing which of her 3 champagne-colored dresses to wear tonight, and issuing orders through a chain of people so that her voice never had to touch a servant's directly. Then we make the East Gallery beautiful, Mireille said. Move the uplights. Warm gels. I want it looking like candlelight by 4. Loretta made a note. You could tell her no. You know. Just once. See what happens. I know exactly what happens. She did. She had worked in this house for 2 years, and she knew the temperature of every room in it. They came to the double doors that opened onto the entrance hall, and Mireille stopped again, because a man was standing in the middle of the marble floor with his hands in his pockets, watching her. Kang Min-jae wore a black suit cut so close it looked poured on, the first 2 buttons of his shirt open at the throat, and he was looking at her the way a man looks at something he isn't allowed to touch in public. The dark line of the dragon inked down the left side of his neck showed above his collar. Half the men in his father's world called him Snow Wolf. None of them called him that to his face. Miss Sutton, he said. Mr. Kang. Loretta suddenly remembered something in the kitchen and left. Min-jae crossed to her, unhurried, and lowered his voice under the noise of the room. You slept here. I slept a little. You slept in the staff wing. That's where the staff sleeps. His jaw worked. He reached out and, with one finger, straightened the edge of her collar where it had turned up, a small thing, over in a second, and his hand dropped before anyone could see it. Under her blouse, on a thin chain, the gold band of a ring lay warm against her sternum. She had learned to keep it there. She had learned a lot of things. Tonight, he said, after, we tell my mother. We say that every month. This time it's true. She looked at him. 12 months married, 12 months of a courthouse in Queens, and a witness they'd paid $40, and a photograph neither of them could show anyone. 12 months of him promising, and the promise sliding 1 more month down the calendar every time his father's name came up, or the ports, or the family, or the 1,000 things that were always heavier than she was. There's a chair missing from table 9, she said. I have to work. She walked past him. She felt his eyes on her back the whole length of the hall. At the far door, she let herself glance back, once. He hadn't moved. A man in a $5,000 suit standing alone on an acre of marble, watching a woman in a supervisor's vest walk away from him, unable to follow. She'd married that. She'd married the way he looked at her, and the courthouse in Queens, and the 2 nights a month he could get free without questions. She'd told herself it was enough, because the alternative was admitting it wasn't. She turned the corner and put it away, the way she put everything away, in the pocket with the zipper, the one that closed. By noon the flowers were done and the kitchen was screaming. Mireille stood in the pass between 2 chefs who wanted the same 6 feet of counter, arbitrated in 90 seconds, and sent them back to their stations. She tasted the consommé. She sent it back. Salt, she told the saucier, and when he started to argue she took the spoon, added a pinch herself, and handed it back for him to taste. He tasted it. He nodded. That was how she won every argument in this kitchen, not by rank, which she didn't have over these men, but by being right in front of them, 1 spoon at a time. She caught a busboy carrying a tray of stemware over the wet section of the floor and stopped him with a hand on his shoulder before he learned the hard way. Choi Do-yoon found her there, radio in one hand, the head of security in his black uniform and dark tie, his face closed as a locked drawer. Miss Sutton, the guest list changed. How much? 40 new names, late additions. He held out a printed sheet. Mr. Kang Jun-sok added most of them. She scanned it. Names she didn't know, businessmen, a councilman. 2 she recognized from the shipping side. The younger Kang brother had a habit of filling rooms with people who owed him things. Any of them a problem for you? Do-yoon's eyes flicked down the list and back up. Something moved behind them and went still. No. You're sure? I'll manage the door. He always did. He was the only man in this house who'd never once made her feel like furniture, and she'd never fully understood why, except that men who'd carried a weight tended to recognize it in other people. She handed the sheet back. Then we're fine, she said. Reset the metal detector for the east entrance. Jun-sok's guests come through there. He nodded and was gone. She watched him go. Something had been sitting wrong in Do-yoon for a week now, a tightness in the shoulders, a way of standing in doorways like a man waiting for a thing he couldn't name. She'd asked him once if the job was too much and he'd said no, in a voice that meant yes to a different question. She hadn't pushed. In this house you learned whose silences were theirs to keep. At 2 o'clock she went up to check the receiving line. The east gallery ran the width of the house. a long room with a coffered ceiling and a bank of windows facing the drive. 2 years ago it had been hung with hunting scenes. Now it held the family portraits, generations of Kangs in black frames, and at the far end, alone on a stretch of pale wall under its own light, a single glass case on a marble plinth. Mireille had walked past it 100 times. She stopped in front of it now because a maid was polishing the glass and she wanted to check the height of the lights. Inside the case, on a bed of dark velvet, lay a brooch. It was old and it was gold, and it was shaped like a heron in flight. The neck curved, the wings swept back, a single ruby set where the eye would be. The gold had the deep soft color of gold that has been passed through many hands. A small card beside it read, in Korean and English, "The Golden Heron, 1908. "Don't breathe on the case," said a voice behind her. Mireille turned. Park Sun-hee stood in the doorway of the gallery in a silk dress the color of pale wine, pearls at her throat, her gray threaded hair set in a soft bob at the jaw. She was small, and she was straight-backed, and she had the stillness of a woman who had never once in her life had to hurry for anyone. Behind her, 2 paces back and to the side, stood Kang Jun-suk in charcoal gray, hands folded, wearing the smile he wore instead of a face. "Mrs. Kang," Mireille stepped back from the case. "I was checking the lighting for the receiving line." Sun-hee crossed the room. She did not look at Mireille. She looked at the glass, at the brooch inside it, and she reached out and touched the case with one finger, checking for a smudge that wasn't there. "This piece," she said, "came out of Korea in 1908, in the lining of my great-grandmother's coat. Sewn in, she walked 300 kilometers with it against her ribs." She turned her head, finally, and looked at Mireille from the side of her eyes. "Do you know what that is? To carry the only valuable thing your family has left, and know that if the wrong person finds it, you lose everything?" "No, ma'am. No." Sun-hee smiled without warmth. "I don't imagine you would." The maid finished the glass and slipped out. Jun-suk drifted along the row of portraits with his hands behind his back, examining his own ancestors as if he might buy them. "The lights are too bright," Sun-hee said. "It looks like a shop window. Cheapen the brooch and you cheapen the family. Do you understand? I'll warm them. And the receiving line. My guests should see the portraits as they come in. They should understand what they are walking into, not chairs and centerpieces. History." She glanced at the emerald vest, at the clipboard, at Mireille from her shoes to her hairline in one unhurried pass. "You do a great deal of arranging, Miss Sutton. It's a talent. Arranging." Mireille kept her face level. "Thank you, ma'am." It wasn't entirely a compliment. Sun-hee traced the edge of the plinth with one finger, not looking at her. "My mother-in-law arranged things too. Flowers, seating, which cousin sat beside which. She was very good at it, and she died in a small room with a nurse she paid to hold her hand, and no one remembered a single arrangement she ever made." She looked up. "The people who own the room are not the people who fix it. Remember which one you are, and you'll never be disappointed." "I know which one I am. Do you?" Sun-hee turned back to the case. "My son thinks very highly of the staff in this house. He tells me the Galas run better than they ever did. I told him a well-run house is invisible. When you notice the staff, something has gone wrong." She looked up. "I have been noticing you for 2 years." Something passed between them then, quick and cold, and Mireille understood that this woman knew. Not the marriage, not that, or Mireille would already be gone, but something, a shape in the water, a weight where there shouldn't be one. "I keep the house running," Mireille said. "That's my job. When it's done well, you don't have to think about me at all." For 1 second, Sun-hee's eyes sharpened. Then the second passed and she smoothed it away like a wrinkle in silk. "Warm the lights," she said. "And have someone check the case lock before tonight. It sticks." She walked out. Jun-suk peeled himself off the wall to follow her, and as he passed Mireille, he paused, close, and let his smile widen a degree. "She likes you," he said, "in her way." "Does she?" She wouldn't waste the words otherwise. He tilted his head. The silver watch on his wrist caught the light. "My brother's very lucky. To have someone who takes such good care of things that matter to him." He held the last word a beat too long. Then he was gone down the gallery after his mother, and Mireille stood alone in front of the glass case with her heart going hard and slow, And she made herself look at the heron and not at the door they'd left through. She checked the case lock. It stuck, then gave. She warmed the lights. Then she went back to work, because the chairs still needed counting and the consommé still needed salt, and because working was the only thing in this house that had never once betrayed her. She found Loretta in the laundry. The laundry ran along the basement, low-ceilinged and warm, the big machines turning, the wheeled carts lined up by the folding tables piled with pressed linen. Loretta was matching napkins into stacks of 10, and she took one look at Morel's face and set the napkins down. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing I can point to." "That's her specialty." Loretta pulled out a stool. "Sit." Morel didn't sit. She leaned against the folding table and pressed the heel of her hand into her breastbone, over the chain, over the ring. "She said she'd been noticing me for 2 years. That's a threat. It's a warning. With that woman, there's no difference." Loretta folded a napkin, unfolded it, folded it again, needing her hands to move. "You know what I've never told you? First week you worked here, she asked me who hired the pretty one. That's what she called you. The pretty one. Like a lamp somebody bought without asking her." Mireille almost laughed. It came out wrong. "He wants to tell her tonight," she said. Loretta went still. "Minjay?" "After the gala. He said that before." "I know. He said that a lot of times before, baby." "I know." Morel pushed off the table. Down the row of carts, the last one sat piled with tablecloths waiting to go up, and on top of the linen, out of place, lay a slim, dark tablet somebody had set down and forgotten. She noticed it the way she noticed everything out of place, filed it, meant to have it moved. "I know how many times he's said it." Loretta came around the table and took both her hands. Her palms were dry and warm and certain. "Listen to me. I raised 3 kids in a house not much bigger than that laundry cart, and I learned one thing worth passing on." She squeezed. "A man who loves you in the dark and can't say your name in the light isn't halfway to loving you. He's all the way to the edge of it and no further. You hear me? He's afraid of his father. His father's been dead 2 years." Morel said nothing. "His father's dead," Loretta said again, gentler, "and he's still afraid of him. And that fear's got your name on it now. You didn't marry a coward, but you married a man who's got a coward living in him. And tonight you're going to find out which one of them shows up." She let go. "I hope it's the man. God, I hope it's the man. But you get yourself ready for the other one." Mireille looked at her for a long moment. Then she straightened her vest, squared the clipboard against her hip, and became the supervisor again, because there were still 4 hours and 100 things. "I have to dress the gallery," she said. "I know you do. Warm gels, she wants candlelight." "I know, baby." At the door, Morel stopped. "Loretta, that tablet on the cart. The linens go up at 5. Get it off before it goes with them. Somebody'll want it. I'll move it. Don't let it go up with the cart." "I heard you." Loretta waved her off. "Go. Fix the lights for the woman who insulted you. That's the job." Mireille went. The guests began arriving at 7. By then the house had transformed. The East Gallery glowed the color of honey, the family portraits deepening in the warm light, the golden heron alone in its case at the end of the room like a jewel in a church. Mireille stood at the service edge of the ballroom in a fresh vest, earpiece in, clipboard traded for a discreet radio, and she watched 240 guests flow through the doors and become a party. She was everywhere and nowhere. She caught a waiter before he ran out of the good champagne and rerouted the reserve. She found the councilman's wife a chair when the woman's heel gave out. She stood in a doorway and watched the room breathe and adjusted it with a word here, a hand signal there, and no one who mattered saw her do any of it. Sun He would have approved. A well-run house is invisible. Minjay worked the room in his black suit, shaking hands, and once, across 40 feet of crowd and candlelight, he found her eyes and held them for a full second before someone claimed his shoulder. She looked away first. She always looked away first. She let herself have one thought, then, standing in the doorway with the party glittering in front of her, if he told his mother tonight, if the man showed up and not the coward. If she walked out of this house at the end of the night as a woman with a name in it instead of a woman who fixed it, she'd stop wearing the ring on a chain under her blouse. She'd wear it on her hand. She'd stand next to him on a staircase and let the room turn toward her the way it turned toward Sun-hee, and she'd never fold another napkin in this house again unless she felt like it. She let herself have that thought for exactly as long as it took a waiter to catch her eye and mouth that they were short on the red. Then she folded it up and put it away, and went to solve the red. A tall woman in a terracotta dress and an ivory coat moved through the crowd with a leather folio under one arm, taking the room in the way an accountant takes a balance sheet, and asked Mireille where she might leave her coat. Mireille pointed her to the cloakroom and clocked her. Not a wife, not a guest of the family, a woman here to look. She filed it and moved on. Junseok held court near the bar with a cluster of the men he'd added to the list that morning, and twice she saw him lean in close to one of them, and twice she saw money change hands in the way money changes hands at these things. Not money at all, but the promise of it. A nod, a card, a hand on a forearm. Once she caught a fragment as she passed with a tray of refolded napkins for the head table. The port paperwork clears Monday, tell him the family's good for it. And Junseok's eyes came up and found her, and his smile arrived a half-second late, and she kept walking as if she'd heard nothing at all. She had heard everything. She always did. It was the job. Do-yoon stood against the wall behind him, watching, his face a locked drawer, and once Junseok said something to him low and quick and Do-yoon's jaw tightened and he nodded and looked at nothing. At 9 o'clock, Sun-hee made her entrance. She came down the main staircase in a long gown of champagne silk stitched with pale Korean embroidery, the pearls at her throat, and pinned over her heart, catching every light in the room, the golden heron. She had taken it out of the case herself. Mireille watched from the edge of the room as the guests turned toward the staircase the way flowers turn, as the matriarch descended into her party and let it gather at her feet. She watched Sun-hee accept them, one at a time, her hand extended, her chin level, the brooch flashing gold against the silk. She watched her be adored, and she watched Sun-hee's eyes travel the room, over the heads of her guests, past her sons, past the councilmen and the shipping men, and the wives in their jewels, until they found the woman in the emerald vest, standing against the wall, where the staff stood. Sun-hee held her gaze. She lifted one hand, unhurried, and touched the brooch at her heart, 2 fingers, the way she'd touched the glass case that afternoon. Then she smiled, small, precise, meant only for Mireille, and turned back to her guests as if nothing at all had happened. Mireille's radio crackled in her ear. A problem in the kitchen, the sommelier and the second course. She turned to deal with it because that was the job, and the job did not stop for a woman on a staircase, and her hand had already come up to press the earpiece before she registered that her own 2 fingers had gone, without her telling them to the center of her chest, to the chain, to the ring, to the promise pressed warm against her breastbone that no one in this bright and gilded room was allowed to know she wore. She dropped her hand. Across the ballroom, under a chandelier the size of a car, Min-jae was watching his mother touch the brooch, and watching Mireille from the corner of his eye, and on his face was the look of a man doing arithmetic he was afraid to finish. "Kitchen," Mireille said into the radio. "On my way." And she went. The wine problem was not a wine problem. Mireille found the sommelier arguing with a runner over 2 cases that had been carried to the wrong pantry, and she settled it in under a minute. The reds to the service bar, the second pour held until the toast, the runner sent back up with a tray he hadn't dropped. She checked the clock over the walk-in. 9:10. She smoothed her sleeve and started back toward the floor. She didn't make it to the stairs. Loretta caught her by the elbow at the mouth of the service corridor, and Loretta never grabbed. "Something's wrong up there," she said. "Lo, Mrs. Kang, she's off the floor and she's got Do-yoon and the boy with her in the East Gallery." Off the floor. Mireille repeated it because it changed things. Sun-hee did not leave a room she owned. Since when? 2 minutes. Maybe 3. Loretta's hand tightened. "The music's still playing, but the guests can feel it. You feel it, girl. Go up the back." Mireille went up the back. The service stair led out behind the East Gallery's velvet rope, and she came through it fast and quiet, and stopped just inside the light. Sun-hee stood at the display case. The little glass door hung open. The velvet stand where the heron had been was empty, a shallow dent in the fabric where weight had pressed for 100 years and then been lifted. The brooch was gone. Junseok stood at his mother's shoulder in the charcoal suit. Close, one hand hovering near her back as if she might fall and he wanted to be seen catching her. Do-yoon faced them both. His radio was in his hand. He wasn't using it. "When?" Sun-hee said. Not loud. That was the thing about her voice. It never had to be loud. The rounds were every 20 minutes. Do-yoon said. "I have the log. 9 o'clock it was here. 9:05 it was here. And now." Do-yoon looked at the empty velvet. Mireille stepped into the light. Mrs. Kang. 3 faces turned. For one beat, Sun-hee's expression did something Mireille had never seen it do. It opened, raw, before it sealed. Then it sealed. "There she is," Sun-hee said softly, and the softness was worse than a shout. "What's missing?" Mireille said, though she knew. "Say it out loud. Make the room say it." "You know exactly what's missing." Sun-hee's hand rose to her own chest, to the bare champagne silk where the heron had ridden all night. She'd worn it down the stairs. She'd touched it while she looked at Mireille, and now it was not there. My mother's brooch? My grandmother's. It walked 300 kilometers in a coat lining, and it did not survive that to be lifted off my chest at a party. "Off your chest?" Mireille kept her voice flat. "You were wearing it. I set it back in the case at 1:30, for the photographs." A muscle moved in Sun-hee's jaw. "I locked it myself. The lock that stuck." Mireille had felt it stick that afternoon, felt it seed when she leaned. She said nothing about the lock. "Not yet." Jun-seok spoke, and his tone was oil on water. "Mother, this doesn't need to become a scene. We have 200 guests. Half of them matter." He turned to Do-yoon. "Seal the doors quietly. No announcement. We do this ourselves before anyone downstairs knows a thing is wrong." Then, to his mother, gentle, "A discreet search. Staff first. It's almost always staff. No offense to anyone present." He didn't look at Mireille when he said it. He didn't have to. The room did. "Staff first," Mireille said. "It's procedure." Jun-seok smiled at her, warm, apologetic, a man doing a distasteful duty well. "You'd want the same, wouldn't you, if it were your grandmother's?" Do-yoon hadn't moved. His shoulders were up around his ears, the way they'd been all afternoon, the way they'd been behind Jun-seok at the bar. He looked at Mireille for half a second, and there was something in it she couldn't read, something that looked almost like an apology getting ready. "Fine," Mireille said. "Search me first." Sun-hee's chin lifted. "I run this floor. I was in this gallery at 2 o'clock and I've been on the ballroom floor since 7. Mireille lifted her arms a little away from her sides. "If it's staff first, it's the head of staff first. I've got nothing to hide. Search me and let's find your heron." For a moment, nobody accepted the offer. And Mireille understood, watching them not move, that the offer had already done something she hadn't meant it to do. She'd made herself the center of the search by volunteering for it. Jun-seok recovered smoothly. "That won't be necessary." "It's necessary," Sun-hee said. She crossed the gallery herself. She did not send Do-yoon and she did not send her son. She came the way a woman comes who intends to be the one whose hands are on you when it happens, and she stopped in front of Mireille, close enough that Mireille could smell the tuberose and the wine. "Arms," Sun-hee said. Mireille held her arms out. Sun-hee's hands went to the shoulders of the emerald vest first, patted down the lapels, the front, brisk, clinical. The search of a woman who had watched her mother frisked at a border once, and never forgotten how it was done. She reached the left breast pocket of the vest. She stopped. Mireille felt it before she understood it, a small weight against her chest that had not been there this morning, a weight she had not put there, pressing where the woman's fingers pressed. She looked down. Sun-hee drew the heron out of Mireille's vest pocket by one gold wing. The ruby caught the warm gallery light Mireille had gelled that afternoon and threw it red across the ceiling. The room stopped breathing. "No," Mireille said. It came out of her before thought, the truth of a body that knows it did not do the thing. She stared at the brooch in Sun-hee's fingers, at the pocket of her own vest, at the small dent in the velvet across the room, and the pieces would not fit because they had been made not to fit. "No," she said again, and hated how it sounded, hated that the truest word she had sounded exactly like a lie. Sun-hee held the heron up between them. Her hand did not shake. 2 years, she said. 2 years I let you into this house. I did not put that there. It came out of your pocket. Someone put it. Mireille stopped. Look at the room. Do the arithmetic before you speak. She'd checked the locket too. She'd told Loretta about the tablet. She'd heard Junsuk at the bar say, the port paperwork clears Monday. She had, without meaning to, spent the whole day standing next to every thread of this, and there was no version she could say fast enough that would not sound like a woman inventing a story with a stolen heirloom in her pocket. Do Yun, Sun Hee said, call the police. Do Yun lifted the radio. His thumb found the button. He didn't press it. Do Yun. Ma'am. His voice came out rough. Ma'am, the log. Call them. And that was when Min Jae came through the velvet rope. He came from the main gallery entrance, not the service stair, which meant he'd come up the front, which meant someone downstairs had already felt the wound in the party and gone to find him. His black jacket was buttoned. The dragon on the left of his neck showed above his collar as he turned his head, taking in the open case, the empty velvet, his mother's raised hand, the gold heron between his mother's fingers, and Mireille standing with her arms still half lifted from her sides, like a woman waiting to be measured for something. His eyes went to the brooch, then to the pocket it had come from, then to her face. What's happening? He said. Your supervisor, Sun Hee said, has been keeping my mother's brooch in her clothing. That's not, Mireille started. It came out of her pocket, Min Jae. My hand, her pocket, in front of Doyun and your brother. Min Jae looked at Mireille. This was the moment. She saw him arrive at it the way she'd watched him arrive at things all year. The small stillness, the calculation running behind the eyes, the man weighing a thing he was afraid to finish weighing. This morning he'd said tonight, after the gala, I'll tell her. One sentence, one true sentence would end this. She's my wife. Say it and the whole shape of the room changes. Min Jae, she said, quiet, just to him. She didn't say the rest. She let his name carry it. His jaw worked. Mother, he said, let's not call anyone yet. Not I married her, not she didn't do this. Let's not call anyone yet. Something in Mireille's chest went very cold and very still, the way a room goes still when the heat's been cut and you haven't noticed until you have. Not call anyone. Sun Hee turned the full weight of herself on her son. She's a thief, Min Jae. In my house, on the night of the foundation gala with 200 guests downstairs and the Hana people among them. And you want to, what, have a conversation about it? I want to understand it before it becomes a headline. Min Jae's voice found its footing there, on the ground he actually stood on, which was the ground of the family name. You call the police tonight, in this house, with those cameras out front, and it's not a stolen brooch story anymore. It's a Kang scandal story. That's the story that runs Monday. That's the story that sits next to the port announcement. He didn't look at Junsuk when he said port. Mireille did. Junsuk's face didn't move, and the not moving was its own tell. Sun Hee heard it too, the word port, and for half a second her eyes flicked to her younger son and then away, and Mireille filed that away in the cold, still place with everything else. So, Sun Hee said, your solution. A few hours. Min Jae said it like a man laying down a card he wasn't sure of. We hold this internally. Nothing leaves this floor tonight. The guests finish their evening. Tomorrow in daylight, with lawyers if we need them, we handle it properly, quietly. The brooch is recovered. He gestured at it in his mother's hand, the point already made for him. Nothing's lost. There's no crime to report if the property's back in your possession, and no one wants charges. I want charges. You want the heron. You have the heron. Mireille listened to her husband negotiate the terms of her arrest and did not say a word, because every word she'd said so far had made it worse, and because the largest thing happening in the room was not being said by anyone. He was not defending her. He was managing her. He was managing the situation of her, the liability of her, the way he'd manage a broken elevator or a bad table 9, a few hours to resolve it internally. She was a problem to be resolved internally. And her? Sun Hee said. She was looking at Mireille now, holding the brooch, and something had shifted in the older woman's face too, a satisfaction that had settled in under the anger, the look of a woman watching a plan land soft and clean. What do we do with her for these few hours of yours? She stays, Min Jae said, on the property. She doesn't leave and she doesn't go back on the floor. Do-yun. He turned to the security chief. No radio, nothing on the logs. You escort her somewhere quiet and you keep it quiet. Do-yoon lowered the radio slowly. He looked, for a moment, like a man being handed a weight he already knew he could not carry clean. Yes, sir, he said. This is insane, Mireille said. Every head turned. She lowered her arms. She was done holding them out. You're standing in a circle deciding where to store me for the night, like I'm the silverware. Nobody in this room has asked me one question. She looked at Do-yoon. You had eyes on this case all night. You have a log. When did you last see it in the case? Do-yoon's mouth opened. Don't answer her, Junseok said. Easy, amused almost. She's very good, mother. Watch her work. She's had 2 years to learn all of us. She knows the log. She knows the rounds. She knows the locksticks. He smiled at Mireille. Yes, I know you checked it this afternoon. Half the staff saw you at that case. She knows the whole house. Who better to lift it? Who better to explain it away? There it was. He'd been building it since 2 o'clock. Longer. The lock sticks, Mireille said, which means it doesn't have to be opened with a key, which means it doesn't have to be me. Or it means you knew it wouldn't leave a mark when you opened it. Junseok spread his hands. Reasonable. Warm. See how it goes both ways? That's the trouble with clever people. Everything they say is clever. She looked at him and understood him completely for the first time. Not the shape of what he'd done, not yet, but the fact of him, the pleasure he was taking, the way he'd made sure she'd overheard the port at the bar and made sure she'd been at the case and made sure the discreet search fell on staff first. He'd built a room where every true thing she said proved the lie. Min-jae-sun, he said. Decide. The Hana people are wondering where I am. Min-jae looked at his mother. He looked at his brother. He looked, last and longest, at his wife. And Mireille watched him not choose her one more time, watched the sentence that would have cost him everything sit behind his teeth and stay there. A few hours, he said. We resolve it internally. Nobody says the word police tonight. He turned to Do-yoon. Take her down to the housekeeping office. It's off the guest wing. Loretta's got a key. A pause. Be gentle. Be gentle. As if gentleness were the thing at stake. Do-yoon stepped toward her, not quite reaching, the radio dead in his hand, and murmured, Miss Sutton, this way. Please. She didn't move yet. 12 months, she said. It came out of her without a plan, quiet, and only Min-jae could have known what it meant. And she watched it land on him, and only on him, watched him flinch like she'd touched the dragon on his neck. Sun-hee frowned, a number with no context, she filed it and moved on. But Min-jae went still all the way down. What did you say? Sun-hee said. I said I've worked 12-hour days in this house. Mireille didn't look away from Min-jae when she lied for him. Even now. Even here. She didn't know why she covered him, and she hated that she did. You'll want to check the vitrine glass for prints before your few hours turn into a story about how you handled a theft with no evidence. That's all. I'm a professional. I'll go where the man asks. She turned to Do-yoon. Housekeeping office. Sun-hee held the heron up one more time, between all of them, and set it, deliberately, tenderly, back onto the velvet dent in the open case, where the weight fit the century-old hollow like a key fits a lock. She closed the little glass door. She did not lock it. The lock stuck. 2 years, she said again, to no one, to the case, to the heron. I have an eye for people. I told you that this afternoon. She looked at Mireille. I said I'd been watching you. I said there was something you were carrying that you thought no one could see. A thin smile. I was right. I'm always right. I just had the shape of it wrong. You still have the shape of it wrong, Mireille thought. Both of you. All 3 of you. She didn't say it. Do-yoon opened the velvet rope for her. As she passed him, close, he spoke so low it was barely breath. The rounds were clean at 9:05. Then louder, for the room. Watch the step, miss. She went with him. The east gallery fell away behind them, the warm gelled light and the empty then full case, and the 3 Kangs standing in a triangle that would not survive the night intact, though none of them knew it yet. Down the back stair, along the service corridor where she'd stood 10 minutes ago as a woman with a wine problem and a floor to run. The music still played somewhere above, muffled, a string quartet sawing through something bright, while she was walked to a locked room in the house she'd made beautiful. Do-yoon didn't hold her arm. He walked half a step behind, the escort of a man who'd been ordered to guard someone he didn't believe was guilty and hadn't yet decided what that made him. "You want to tell me who you saw at that case between 9:05 and now?" Mireille said, low, not turning her head. "I can't. Can't or won't." His jaw tightened. "The office is at the end of this hall." "Do-yoon." She stopped. He stopped. In the dim of the corridor, his face had the gray look of a man who hadn't slept right in weeks. "You didn't press the button. She told you 3 times and you didn't press it. That's not nothing. I saw it and so did she. You should keep walking, miss. You've got a wedding ring and a kid's drawing folded in your breast pocket. It's been showing over the top all night. Top corner. I notice things. It's my job." She watched that land. "Whatever they've got on you, whatever the shape of it is, it's already got its hand around your throat, or you'd have pressed that button. You know I didn't do this." For a long moment, Do-yoon said nothing. The music sawed on above them. "Housekeeping office," he said finally. But his voice had lost something. "There's a chair. Loretta'll bring you water. Sit tight and this is over by morning." He didn't sound like he believed the last part. Loretta was already at the office door when they reached it, key in hand, face carved out of stone. She looked at Do-yoon. She looked at Mireille. She looked at the empty spot on Mireille's chest where the brooch had ridden for 30 seconds and understood the whole thing without a word being said, the way she'd understood everything in this house for 11 years. "I'll take her," Loretta said to Do-yoon. "My orders are—" "Your orders are to keep it quiet and off the logs. I'm quiet and I'm off the logs. Go back up before that boy sends someone to check you're doing your job." Loretta held the door. "Go on, Do-yoon, before you have to explain why you're standing here looking like that." Do-yoon looked at Mireille one more time. Whatever was in his face, he didn't have the room to say it. He turned and went back up the corridor, radio still dark in his hand. Loretta pulled Mireille inside and shut the door and turned the lock, from the inside, so it read locked to anyone who tried it, and Mireille understood that too, the small mercy of it, locked in a way that was really locked out. "Sit," Loretta said. "I can't sit." "Then stand there and breathe, because you've gone the color of ash and I need you thinking." Loretta put both hands on Mireille's shoulders, the way she'd done in the laundry that afternoon, a lifetime ago, when the worst thing in the world had only been a man who might not keep his word. "Tell me what happened up there." "Fast, every piece," Mireille told her. "The open case, the staff first search, volunteering, Sun-hee's own hands finding the weight in the vest pocket that Mireille had not put there, the heron coming out by its wing, Jun-suk's face that didn't move, Do-yoon's thumb that didn't press the button. And Min-jae, she got to Min-jae and her voice did a thing it had not done all year, a small break, quickly closed. "He said a few hours," she said, "to resolve it internally." Loretta's hands tightened. "That coward. He didn't say I did it. He didn't say you didn't." Loretta's eyes were wet and furious. 12 months, you've been carrying his ring on a chain under your blouse so his mama wouldn't see, and the first night it costs him something, he stands in a room and calls you a situation. She let go, turned, pressed the heel of her hand to her mouth for a second, got herself back. "Lord, all right. We don't have time for what he is. We have time for what we do." "What we do?" Mireille's hand had gone, without her deciding it, to her chest. Not to the empty vest pocket, but higher, to the chain under the blouse, to the ring. She caught herself doing it, and this time she did not lower her hand. She closed her fingers around the ring through the fabric. "They put it in my pocket, Loretta. Somebody stood close enough to me tonight to drop a 100-year-old brooch into my vest and I never felt it, on my own floor. Somebody or somebody who paid somebody. The lock sticks." Mireille was moving now, pacing the little office, the cold, still place in her chest starting to run warm, starting to run towards something with an edge. "Jun-suk knew I checked the lock this afternoon. He said it out loud up there. Half the staff saw you at that case. He made sure to know that. He put 40 names on that list. He was at the bar tonight, telling strangers the port paperwork clears Monday, family's good for it, and he saw me hear it." She stopped. "And this afternoon, in the laundry." She stopped. "What?" Loretta said. "The tablet." Mireille turned. "On the cart. The thin one, sitting on top of the linens. That shouldn't have been there. I told you to take it off before the cart went up at 5. Did you? Loretta went very still. The cart went up at 5. I never touched the tablet. I got pulled to the reception line. Mrs. Kang wanted it moved to the East Gallery, remember? You sent me to sort the gels. I never got back to that cart. Her hand came up to her own mouth. It's still down there. Unless it went up with the linens. The music above them changed. Muffled through 2 floors of the house, the quartet ended a piece, and the guests applauded. A distant patter, 200 pairs of hands clapping for a party that was still, upstairs, pretending nothing had cracked. Mireille looked at the locked door, then at Loretta, then at her own hand, still closed around the ring on the chain, the ring she'd worn hidden for a year, so a woman who'd just called her a thief wouldn't have to look at it. She opened her fingers. She looked at the ring through the thin fabric of the marfil blouse, the small dishonest weight she'd agreed to carry. He said a few hours to resolve it internally, she said, and her voice had gone quiet and level and completely changed. Fine, a few hours. She looked up at Loretta. Where's that laundry cart now? Loretta didn't answer with words. She crossed to the small window that looked onto the service alley and pressed her forehead to the cold glass for a second, the way a woman does when she is counting the risk before she names it. Then she turned around. Basement. Corner of the linen room, past the folding tables. Unless someone rolled it up in the elevator Raphael just fixed. Then it might be upstairs. Might be. Loretta's mouth was a line. Or it's sitting where you left it, waiting for you to walk into the one room they'll check first. Mireille reached up and unclasped the chain from her neck. The ring slid off the thin gold and into her palm. She held it there, in the light of the single lamp, and looked at it for what felt like the last honest second she would give it. He said a few hours. You already said that. I'm saying it to me now. She closed her fist. Then she opened it and set the ring down flat on the blotter, the small dishonest weight she had agreed to carry for 12 months. She left it there, on the wood, where anyone could see it. Loretta watched the ring land. You're leaving it. I'm leaving it here. Morel's voice had gone quiet and level, the tone that made line cooks stop arguing. If I carry it out, I'm still carrying his lie. I'm done carrying his lie. If he wants me to wear it, he can find me and ask me in daylight, in front of his mother, with his own mouth. She stood. The collet pulled at her shoulders. She unbuttoned it and folded it once. Esmeralda sighed in and laid it beside the ring. I'm not walking out of this house in his uniform either. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought clearer in my life. Loretta went to the door, unlocked it, and put her body in the gap. Down the guest corridor a vacuum ran. 2 rooms over, someone laughed at the party they didn't know had cracked. You go out the front, they'll say the thief ran. You go out the service door, they'll say the same thing quieter. Let them say it. Mireille stopped at the threshold. I'm not running. I'm relocating. She almost smiled. There's a cart to find. They went down together on the back stairs that smelled of bleach and old cedar. On the half landing they passed a housemaid carrying a tray of empty coupes. The girl's eyes went to Mireille's shoulders, bare of the green, then away, fast. Word had already traveled the servant's spine of the house. It always did. The basement was colder than the party. Fluorescent tubes buzzed over the folding tables. The linen room sat at the far corner, its door propped with a fire extinguisher, racks of pressed sheets standing like white walls. The cart was gone. Mireille stood in the empty corner where it should have been and put her hand flat on the concrete of the wall, feeling for something she couldn't have named. It went up. Or someone moved it 3 feet. Loretta was already checking the gaps between racks, pulling folded stacks aside. Raphael runs the freight now that the elevator's back. Ask Raphael. Raphael's on the floor. Raphael answers his radio. Loretta stopped. Which you don't have anymore. The 2 of them looked at each other in the buzzing light. Then a third voice came from the doorway, low and careful. You looking for the betting cart? The one with the bad wheel? Raphael Ortiz stood there with his tablet against his hip and grease on 2 knuckles, Oliva shirt untucked at one side from crawling into the elevator shaft. He looked at Mireille's bare shoulders, at Loretta's face, and did the arithmetic that the whole basement had done before him. I moved it, he said. 9:40. It was blocking the shaft door, and I needed the shaft door. Where? Freight up to 2, then I left it in the service vestibule outside the East Gallery. He stopped. His jaw worked. That's where they're all standing now. Nobody spoke. The tubes buzzed. There was a tablet on it, Muriel said. Thin, black. On top of the folded linen. Did you touch it? There was nothing on top. Raphael's brow pulled. It was just sheets when I moved it. Nothing. Nothing on top. He set the tablet down on a folding table, slow, like the thought was a live wire. But the cart's got a canvas liner. Sheets ride in the liner. Anything slides down the side, it goes under the liner, into the frame. You want a thing to disappear on a moving cart, you don't put it on top. He looked up. You drop it down the side. Muriel was already moving. They're standing on top of it, Raphael said behind her, and then he was moving too. The whole family's standing around the one thing you want. They took the freight, because the freight led out behind a service door, and the service door led into the vestibule, and the vestibule was the last unguarded skin of the East Gallery. Raphael keyed the elevator with his maintenance fob. Loretta pressed close in the small steel box, breathing through her nose. On the way up, she said, "If Junseok sees you, he won't. If Sunhee." Loretta. Muriel turned. In the mirrored back of the freight car, her own face looked back at her. No green, no chain, just a woman in a marfim blouse with her jaw set. "I know exactly how many minutes I have. Min Jae gave them to me himself. He thinks he handed me a cage. He handed me a clock." The door rolled open on the second floor. "Watch the vestibule mouth. If anyone comes, drop a tray." "I don't have a tray." "Then drop yourself." The vestibule was a narrow throat of a room. Stone floor, a folded screen, a coat valet no one used, and against the wall, the bedding cart with the bad wheel, its canvas liner heaped with pressed sheets. Through the closed gallery doors came the party's murmur and, closer, a single voice she knew. Junseok, pitched for a small audience, laughing at something. 6 feet of oak between them. Mireille went to the cart on the balls of her feet. She lifted the liner. Sheets, only sheets, warm still from the press. She slid her hand down the inside seam, along the cold aluminum ribs of the frame, past a lost sock, past a bobby pin, past the grit that collects in the bones of a house, and her fingers closed on a flat rectangle wedged in the corner where the frame welded. She drew it out. The tablet, screen dark, cool, dead-looking. She pressed the button. Nothing. She pressed and held. A white apple, then a lock screen, battery at 9%. No passcode. The home screen bloomed. Someone's screen, a stranger's, apps in a grid, a photo of a harbor behind them. Not the family's, not staff issue. She thumbed the folders, hands steady, only because she made them. Mail she couldn't open, a messaging app that asked for a code. And then, bottom row, a plain gray icon, a voice memo app, the little red waveform. She opened it. A list of recordings, dated, timed, most of them minutes long, meaningless names. New recording 14, new recording 15. She scrolled to the top, to the most recent, and the timestamp under it read 2:47 that afternoon. 2:47, while she'd been checking the vitrine lock at 1400, while the house was still just a house. She looked at the closed gallery doors. She looked at the battery, 9%, blinking toward red. "Loretta," she breathed, not turning. "Come here, ears." Loretta came. Raphael stayed at the vestibule mouth with the elevator held on his fob, one boot in the door so it couldn't leave without them. Mireille turned the volume to its lowest bar. She cupped the tablet between her body and Loretta's, so the sound had nowhere to go but the two of them, and she pressed play on the recording stamped 2:47. Static first. The rustle of fabric, a thing set down on cloth. Then a room's ambient hush. She knew that hush, the particular deadness of the East Gallery with its heavy drapes. A woman's voice, low, unhurried, each consonant placed like a pearl on a string. Sunhee. "You'll do it during the toast," the recording said. "When the room is looking at me and not at her." A man's voice answered, and it was frayed at the edges, and Mireille knew it too. The man who had not pressed the radio, the man with a child's drawing folded in his breast pocket. "Do-yoon." "Ma'am. If it's found on her, it will be found on her. That is the point." A pause. the small sound of a cup meeting a saucer. Left pocket of the vest. She keeps her hands full during service. She won't feel it. And when she says she didn't, she will say she didn't. Sun Hee's voice did not rise. That was the worst of it. Mirel would think later that none of it rose. Everyone says they didn't. What matters is where the brooch is, not what the girl says. You've seen how this house decides. A silence. The drape deadened hush. Duyun, softer now. A blade wrapped in silk. How old is your daughter this year? The frayed voice went very quiet. 7. 7 is a beautiful age. It would be a shame for anything about her father's records to become complicated. The overtime, the cash, the nights the logs don't match. Fabric moved. You've been careless for years, and I've been kind. Be useful once, and I'll go on being kind. Left pocket, during the toast. The recording hissed. A door. Footsteps. Then nothing. Loretta had both hands over her own mouth. Above her fingers, her eyes were wet and furious. Mireille had stopped breathing without deciding to. She let the air out slow through her teeth. She looked at the battery. 8%. Play it again, Loretta whispered. No time. It dies. We lose it. Mireille's thumb hovered. I need this off the tablet before the tablet's gone. I need it somewhere they can't reach through a wall. Your phone. In the office. With my colleague. She almost laughed at the cruelty of it. I stripped myself of every tool I had 10 minutes ago to make a point. Raphael's voice came low from the door. Bluetooth. AirDrop. Whatever it is. Push it to my phone. My phone's paid for by me. Not by them. He held it out flat, screen up, a working man's phone with a cracked corner. I never signed a thing that lets them into it. Mireille's hands moved. Share. A spinning wheel. The stranger's tablet searching for a device to trust. Raphael's phone blinked awake in his palm. Accept? And he stabbed the screen with a greasy thumb, and the little bar crawled, and it crawled. And behind the oak 6 feet away, Junseok laughed again, and the battery on the tablet dropped to 7, to 6. Sent. The recording sat in Raphael's phone. He turned the screen so she could see the file, the same waveform, the same 247. Again, Mireille said, send it to Loretta too. Send it 3 places. Because she had learned, tonight, exactly how easy it was to make one small thing disappear off a moving cart. They sent it twice more, to Loretta's cheap phone and to a number Loretta typed from memory. Her eldest son, in the Bronx, who would keep it safe precisely because he wouldn't know what he was holding. 3 copies. Off the tablet, out of the house through the air. Then the tablet in Mireille's hand went dark for good, the screen a black mirror with her own face in it. For the first time since Sun Hee's fingers had pulled the brooch out of her pocket, she felt the floor come back under her feet. That's her, Loretta breathed. That's her own voice, ordering it. That's her voice ordering it, Mireille said. And that's Doyun's daughter. She used to do it. She slid the dead tablet back down into the frame of the cart, into the exact corner it had come from, and settled the liner over the sheets the way it had been. Let it stay where they'd hidden it. If it was found gone, they'd know someone had it. If it was found dead in the frame, it was just a lost tablet. Drained, forgotten. Leave it. It's told us everything it's going to. Whose tablet even is it? Raphael turned his phone over in his hand like it might bite. That's not house issue. Mireille had been asking herself that since the harbor photo bloomed on the lock screen. A stranger's device. A recorder left running in the East Gallery at 2:47, catching Sun Hee at her most certain. Somebody's recording this family, she said slowly. Somebody who left a machine in the gallery to catch exactly this, and then lost it, or planted it, or... She stopped. The woman in terracotta, the pasta de curo, the way she'd walked the room measuring it. She filed the thought and shut the drawer on it. Not now. It doesn't matter whose it is. What's in it is on 3 phones now. The gallery doors moved. Not opened. Moved. The small give of a hand testing a handle from the other side. All 3 of them went still. Raphael's boots slid out of the elevator. The doors began to close on his fob, and he caught them with his shoulder without looking. Loretta stepped in front of Mireille, broad and calm, a housekeeper who happened to be standing in a service vestibule, nothing to see. The door opened. Choi Do-yun stood in the gap, backlit gold by the gallery, radio on his shoulder, badge catching the light. His eyes went across the three of them, to the cart, to Morel's bare shoulders where the green should have been, to her face. For a long second, nobody breathed. "The corridor's supposed to be clear," Doyun said. His voice was the flat official one, the one for cameras and logs, but his eyes weren't flat. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had heard, from 6 feet away, the low tick of a recording he prayed he was imagining. "Staff isn't authorized on 2 during the event." "I'm escorting Miss Sutton off the property," Loretta said, smooth as glass. "Through the service side, per Mr. Kang's instruction. The service side's the other stair. The other stair's got guests on it." Doyun looked at Morel. She looked back at him, and she made a decision then, in the space of a breath, that she would remember as the moment she stopped being the accused and started being the one who knew. "How old is your daughter, Doyun?" The radio hissed on his shoulder. His face did not move, and everything behind it moved at once. His hand, which had been resting easy near his belt, closed slowly into nothing. 7, he said, before he could stop himself. And then, quieter, the official voice gone out of it entirely. "How do you—" "During the toast," Morel said. "Left pocket, because I keep my hands full during service." Doyun took a half step back like the words had weight. Behind him, the gallery glowed and murmured, the vitrine on its pedestal, the empty velvet. He put a hand against the doorframe. "I didn't want," he started. "I know what you didn't want." She kept her voice down under the party. "You didn't press the radio. You said the rounds were clean at 9:05. You've been telling me the truth in the only language they left you." She stepped closer, past Loretta's shoulder, close enough that only he could hear. "I'm not going to burn you, Doyun. She used your little girl. That's not on you, that's on her. A breath. But I'm going to need you, not tonight. When I say, you're going to tell it exactly the way it happened, with your own mouth, in front of the people who think this house always decides right." His eyes were wet at the rims, and he was fighting it like a man fights drowning. "If I do that, they'll bury everything. The overtime, they'll try." Morel held his gaze. "Let them try in the open. In the open, you've got me, and her, and a room full of witnesses. In the dark, you've just got her. Which one's kept your daughter safer so far?" The radio hissed again. A voice on it, distant. Doyun position. Junsok's voice, the smooth one, from inside the gallery. Doyun's thumb went to the button. Mireille watched the same thumb that hadn't pressed it before. He pressed it now. "Corridor's clear," he said into the radio, eyes never leaving hers. "Housekeeping's walking a guest's coat down. Nothing here." He let go of the button. He'd just lied to Junsok's face, over the air, on the record he kept. It was a small thing, and it was the largest thing he had done in years. "Go," he said. "Take the coat valet down the west stair. There's no one on it. I cleared it myself 20 minutes ago." He stepped back into the gallery, into the gold, and paused with his hand on the door. "Miss Sutton." "Yes." The rounds really were clean at 9:05. He said it like a man laying down something he'd carried too long. "I want that on the record when you say." "That I said it before. That I didn't wait until it was safe." "It's already on a record," Morel said. 3 of them. Something crossed his face. Not relief. It was too soon for relief. But the first loosening of a knot pulled tight for weeks. He pulled the door shut between them, and the party's murmur cut back to a hush, and the vestibule was just a cold stone throat again, with 3 people in it, and a cart with a dead machine in its bones. Loretta let out a breath she'd been holding for a minute. He nearly went the other way. He didn't. Morel was already at the coat valet, pulling down a guest's long wool coat, dark, anonymous. A coat that would let a woman walk out of a mansion at 11 at night without a story attached. She didn't take it to wear the lie of it. She took it because a woman crossing a winter avenue in a marfim blouse and no coat is a woman someone remembers. "Raphael. The west stair. Go first. Hold the door at the bottom." Raphael went. The freight side shut behind him, sent down to meet them. Loretta caught Mireille's arm at last. "Where will you go? You can't go back to the studio. They pay part of the studio." "I know." Mireille draped the coat over her arm. "That's why I'm not going there." "Then where?" Mireille looked at her, at the woman who had trapped her in the office to keep her safe, who had called Minjay a coward to his absence, who had 11 years in this house, and had just texted a recording of the matriarch's crime to her son in the Bronx, without a second's hesitation. "Your place," Muriel said. "One night, maybe two. I'll be gone before it touches you." Loretta didn't even blink. "It already touches me. I just sent my boy a tape of Park Sun-hee ordering a frame-up. Girl, we passed touches me 10 minutes ago." She pulled her cardigan tighter. "Yes, my place. There's a couch, there's a lock that works, not like this house, where the locks all stick when it's convenient." A hard breath. "You'll eat something. You've had coffee since 4 this morning and nothing else." "I'm not hungry." "You'll eat something anyway." They took the west stair down, 3 flights, Raphael's coat valet ruse holding, past a startled coat check girl who saw a housekeeper walking a guest's wool coat to a waiting car and thought nothing of it, because nothing was the thing she was meant to think. At the bottom, Raphael held the service door against the cold. The alley smelled of the kitchen vents and the river beyond. Mireille stopped 1 step from the open door. Behind her, up 3 flights and through 100 feet of gilded rooms, her husband stood somewhere believing he had bought himself a few quiet hours to manage a wife into silence. Her ring lay on a desk blotter in the governance office where she'd left it, flat, refusing him. Her colite lay folded beside it, and in the frame of a bedding cart on the 2nd floor, a dead tablet held a recording that already didn't need it anymore. She stepped out into the cold. She felt it this time, 12 degrees, maybe colder off the water, on her bare arms before she pulled the borrowed coat around her shoulders. She was glad to feel it. For 12 months she had trained herself not to feel things in this house. Feeling the cold meant she was outside. Outside meant she was moving. "Raphael," she turned in the alley. "The recording's on your phone. Don't play it for anyone. Don't tell anyone you have it. If Junseok's people so much as look at you sideways, you never saw a cart. You fixed an elevator. You went home." "I fixed an elevator." Raphael nodded slowly. "I went home." He hesitated. "But Miss Sutton, when you need it?" "When I need it, I'll ask for it in front of 100 people, and you'll hand it over, and it'll be too late for them to make it disappear." She held his eyes. "Can you carry it that long?" Raphael thought about the freight he'd fixed, and the shaft he'd crawled into, and the cart he'd moved that had turned out to hold the whole house's secret in its bones. "I've carried heavier," he said. "None of it ever mattered this much." A car turned into the mouth of the alley, a plain sedan, Loretta's cousin behind the wheel, called 3 minutes ago from a stairwell. Its headlights washed the 3 of them white. Loretta opened the back door. "Get in before someone with a window sees you." Mireille got in. Loretta came around the other side. Raphael shut the door and stepped back into the shadow of the vent, becoming again a maintenance man on a smoke break, invisible, which was the safest thing a man could be in that house tonight. The sedan pulled out. Through the rear window, the mansion rose gold against the black sky, every window lit, the Gala roaring softly on behind the glass. A party celebrating a family that did not yet know one of its own recordings had just walked out the service door on 3 separate phones. Mireille faced forward. Her hand went to her collarbone out of habit, to the chain, to the ring, and found bare skin. She left it there a moment, then folded both hands in her lap. "Talk to me," Loretta said quietly. "Don't go somewhere in your head I can't follow." "I'm here." Mireille watched the mansion shrink in the mirror. "I'm figuring out who else is in it." "In what?" The recording caught her at 2:47. "On a machine that isn't hers, isn't the family's, isn't mine." Mireille turned the problem over the way she'd turned a short seating chart that morning, a lifetime ago. Somebody's building a case on this family from the inside. Somebody's hunting the Kangs, and tonight they handed me the exact thing I needed to save myself. She almost smiled. Ally or just a stranger with the same enemy? I can't tell yet. Does it matter? Not tonight. Mireille leaned her head back. Her whole body registered, all at once, that she had been standing since 4 in the morning. Tonight it only matters that I have her voice, and that I'm the one who has it, not them. The city slid past. Loretta's cousin drove without questions, the way family drives when they've been told only what they need. Somewhere behind them, a man in a black suit was climbing the back stairs to a governance office to talk his wife into being reasonable, and he was going to open the door and find a folded green colite and a ring lying flat on the blotter and no wife at all. Mireille didn't know that yet. She only knew the ring wasn't on her chest anymore, and for the first time in a year, the empty place there didn't feel like loss. It felt like room to move. His mother used a 7-year-old, she said, to the cold glass, to herself. She used a man's little girl to frame me, and she never once raised her voice. She turned to Loretta. She really does think she always has the right of it. She said it herself tonight. I only got the manner wrong. You heard her wrong. I heard her exactly right. Morel's jaw set. That's the part that's going to end her. Not that she's cruel. That she's certain. Certain people leave recordings. Certain people give orders they think no one will ever play back. She looked at the empty place at her collarbone one more time. I've got a few hours, she thinks. Let her think it. A few hours is all I needed to stop being the woman this happened to. The sedan turned off the avenue, away from the river, toward the bridge and the ordinary streets where a governess kept a couch and a lock that worked. Behind them, the mansion's gold windows dropped below the skyline and were gone. Mireille closed her eyes, not to sleep, to listen, to the recording playing again in her head, every placed consonant, every pause, the small sound of a cup on a saucer, the low, certain voice ordering a woman's ruin during a toast. She had it all now. She had the voice, the witness, the copies, the shape of the thing. What she didn't have yet was the room to play it in, and a woman like Sun Hee would not give her that room twice. When? Loretta asked, as the bridge lights began to strobe across their faces. When do you play it? Morel opened her eyes. When the whole room's looking at her, she said, and not at me. The sedan was halfway across the bridge when Morel told Loretta's cousin to turn around. He met her eyes in the mirror and slowed. Loretta shifted beside her. You said you'd sleep first. I said when the whole room's looking at her. Morel pulled the wool coat off her shoulders and folded it across her knees. The room's still full. The valet stubs run past midnight. If I wait until morning, she gets to write the version everyone believes at breakfast. The cousin took the next exit. The city swung back into the windshield. Loretta didn't argue. She reached into her bag and set the cheap phone in Morel's palm, the one holding the second copy. Then we do it clean. You don't touch a Kang device. You play it off ours. Raphael has his, yours is here. The Bronx has the third. Morel closed her hand around the phone. 3 doors. They can't shut all 3. They came back to the mansion from the north, past the caterer's vans idling at the loading dock. Morel didn't go to the guest entrance. She went to the service door, the one she'd walked out of 2 hours before, and she went up the back stairs to the governance office where she'd left 2 things on the blotter. The ring was still there, flat, catching the desk lamp. The emerald vest was still there, folded beside it. She looked at the ring for a second and left it where it lay. That was for later, or for never, and either way it wasn't for tonight. The vest she picked up. Loretta watched her shake it out. You don't have to put that back on. I know. Morel slid one arm in, then the other, and squared the collar. That's why I'm putting it on. She smoothed the front. 2 years of her own hands had made this room run. She wasn't going to walk into that ballroom pretending she'd never worked there. She was going to walk in as exactly what she was and let them choke on it. Head of staff. Let them see the head of staff. Downstairs, a bell chimed. Silver on crystal. The signal for the last toast of the night. Mireille's hands went still on the collar. That's her, Loretta said. They moved. Sun Hee had the floor. She stood at the head of the long room where the band had gone quiet. A flute of champagne lifted, the gown catching gold from the chandeliers. 200 faces turned up toward her. Junsuk stood at her right, hands folded, the picture of a devoted son. Min Jae stood at her left, and even from the doorway Mireille could see the distance he was keeping from both of them. A hand's width that meant nothing to the guests, and everything to her. The brooch was on Sun Hee's chest again. She'd taken it back out of the case for the photographs. And in a house this old, Sun Hee was saying, her voice pitched warm and easy for the crowd, we learn that the things we treasure most are the things people will try hardest to take from us. A murmur, a few knowing nods. Tonight, one of those things nearly walked out the door. Sun Hee touched the brooch with 2 fingers, the same 2 fingers. It didn't, because this family watches. Because we know the difference between the people who belong at our table and the people we merely pay to set it. The word pay landed soft, and it landed hard. A woman near the front laughed the small laugh of someone who thought she was being let in on something. Mireille walked into the room. She didn't rush. She came up the center aisle between the tables in the emerald vest, and the first heads to turn were the staff along the walls, and then the guests followed the staff, the way a room always follows the people who know where to look. A waiter she'd trained froze with a tray of empty flutes and let her pass. A housemaid pressed back against the drapery. They knew what the vest meant, even if the guests didn't. They knew who set this room, who counted the 240 chairs, who caught the cracked orchid and the wrong wine, and the guest list padded with 40 names nobody could place. The people who did the work turned first, and the people who owned the night turned last, and Mirelle had spent 2 years being invisible in exactly that gap. She walked up the middle of it now on purpose, letting them see her cross from one side of it to the other. Sun Hee saw her last. The flute lowered an inch. "There she is," Sun Hee said, and recovered, and made it part of the speech. "The woman who nearly took it. Come to apologize, I hope." "No." Mirelle stopped 10 feet from her. She raised her voice just enough. "Come to let everyone hear how it got in my pocket." The room's temperature changed. 200 people leaned the same direction at once. Junsok stepped forward smoothly. "This is a private matter that's already been resolved," Mireille said. "Your brother's word. A few hours to resolve it internally." She looked at Min-jae for the first time. He'd gone the color of the tablecloths. "It's been a few hours. I'm resolving it." Do-yoon stood against the far wall, near the service arch, radio on his shoulder. Mireille found him with her eyes and held there a half-second. His hand drifted to the desk edge behind him and gripped it. "Choi," Sun Hee said sharply, not turning. "Remove her." Do-yoon didn't move. "Choi." He looked at the floor, then he looked up, and he didn't cross the room. Sun Hee's chin lifted a fraction. The first crack, so small only the people watching for it saw. Mireille was watching for it. "Everyone's already looking at you," Mireille said to her. "Quiet now, almost gentle, the way you'd say a thing you'd waited a long time to say. So look." She lifted Loretta's phone. Her thumb found the file. Junsok moved for it. He was fast. He came off his heel and closed half the distance before Raphael stepped out of the service arch beside Do-yoon, with his own phone already up and playing, and the sound came from 2 directions at once, from Loretta's phone in Mireille's hand and from Raphael's across the room, doubled, impossible to grab, impossible to shut. Sun Hee's own voice filled the ballroom. During the toast. "When the room is looking at me and not at her." Left pocket of the vest. The murmur died all at once. 200 people went silent together, and in that silence the recording kept going, tinny and clear, bouncing off the marble. "She'll be standing at the wall like she always does. You walk it back on your rounds and you set it in. It takes a second." Then a man's voice, low, unsure. "Ma'am, I can't." "How old is your daughter, Choi? 7? Somebody near the front made a sound. "The overtime sheets don't balance. The shift log doesn't balance. I've been very patient about that. Be useful once, and I go on being gentle." The recording clicked off. Nobody breathed. Mireille lowered the phone. She turned to Do-yoon. She didn't say a word. She just waited, the way she'd promised she would, and let him have the choice with his own mouth. Do-yoon stepped off the wall. "I put it in her pocket." His voice cracked on the first word and steadied on the last. He looked at the guests, not at Sun Hee. 9:40, during the toast. "Because she told me my daughter's name and the hours I couldn't account for, and I was afraid." He pulled a folded square of paper from his breast pocket, a child's crayon drawing, and held it up like a man swearing on a book. "I've got a kid. That's the whole reason. That's the whole ugly reason." A woman at the second table stood up, then sat down again, not knowing what to do with herself. Do-yoon folded the drawing back along its worn crease and put it away over his heart. His hands were shaking. He'd carried that fear in his chest for weeks, and now that it was out in the open air of a ballroom full of strangers, he looked less like a man who'd confessed and more like a man who'd set down something too heavy to hold another minute. "Logs clean at 9:05, he added, quieter to no one and to the record. "I said that before I knew it was safe to say. In the gallery. Ask her." He tipped his head at Mireille. "I want that on the tape too." "It's on the tape," Mireille said. "It's on 3 of them." A man near the bar. One of Junsok's 40, a heavy gold watch on his wrist, pushed his chair back and reached for his coat. Two others at his table did the same. They weren't leaving because they were shocked. They were leaving because they'd heard a word they recognized, and the word was port, and men who came to a gala for a port deal did not want to be standing in the room when the port deal got read aloud. "Sit down," Price said, without raising her voice, from the wall. She didn't have to explain who she was yet. Something in the flatness of it put the gold watch back in his chair. Sun Hee's champagne flute was still in her hand. She set it down on the table beside her with a care that fooled no one. "That recording could be anything," she said, and her voice was smooth again, remade in a single breath. "A performance, a woman with a grievance and a phone can—" "It's on 3 phones," Mireille said. "One's across a bridge in the Bronx right now. You'd have to send somebody there tonight." She let that sit. "Want to send somebody there tonight? In front of all these people?" Sun Hee's mouth closed, and Min Jae stepped forward. He came out from his mother's left and stood in the open floor between Sun Hee and Mireille, in front of everyone, which was the one place he had refused to stand 2 hours ago in the gallery. "She's telling the truth," Min Jae said. The room turned to him. The air, the sun, the name on the invitations. The brooch was planted. My mother ordered it planted. His jaw worked. And when it happened, when it mattered, I stood in that gallery, and I didn't say what I knew. I managed it. I called it a few hours to resolve internally. He looked at Mireille, and something in his face came apart. That was me choosing the house over the truth. In front of you. I own that. That failure is mine. Sun Hee turned on him. "Min Jae." "It's mine, mother." He didn't raise his voice. That was almost worse. "All of it's about to be somebody's. It might as well start being mine." For 1 second, Mireille felt the pull of it. The man finally standing where she'd needed him to stand. 1 second. Then she remembered he was standing there 2 hours late, and she filed the feeling away where the ring was. For later or for never. She lifted the phone again. "There's more," she said. Min Jae's head came up. More? Because she hadn't played all of it. In the vestibule, with the battery dying, she'd stopped the file the moment she had what she came for. She'd shared the whole thing without listening to the end. And on the drive back, in the dark, on Loretta's phone, she'd finally heard where it went. Her thumb moved. The recording started again, further in, past the part they'd heard, and now there were 3 voices on it, and the room was already silent enough to catch a pin. Sun Hee's voice. "It has to be tonight, before Monday." Then a second man, not Do Yoon, younger, easy, amused. Junsok's voice. "It's clean, mother. The port paperwork clears Monday. The shell holds. Nobody looks at a family that just caught a thief on gala night. They look at the thief. That's the whole point of her." A pause on the tape, then Sun Hee, quieter. "She's a person, Junsok. She's cover. The auditors are sniffing the port accounts. Give them a scandal with a face, and they chase the face for a week. A week's all I need for the signatures to land. The woman takes the fall, we look like victims, and the port deal closes, while everyone's watching her get walked out." Click. The recording ended for real this time. For a moment no one in the ballroom understood what they'd heard, and then, in 2s and 3s, they did. It was never about a brooch. Mireille felt the floor tilt under the whole shape of the last 12 hours. Every small cruelty she'd taken as personal. Sun Hee noticing her for 2 years. The condescension in the gallery. The fingers on the brooch. The word pay tonight. None of it had been about her at all. She'd spent the day thinking she was the woman a rich family had decided to break. She wasn't. She was the piece of paper you hold up to draw the eye while the other hand moves. A hand. A distraction. Cover. The insult of that was somehow larger than the theft. To be framed for spite was one thing. To be framed for scheduling. Because the audit was close and the signatures were slow and a scandal with a face bought a week, that was a colder thing. And it settled into her like the 12-degree air had settled into her on the sidewalk hours ago. She felt it now, all of it. The brooch was a prop. The theft was staged not to punish a maid but to bury a headline. To throw a thief in front of the auditors so the port deal could close in the dark behind her. Mireille hadn't been the target of the plan. She'd been the distraction. A living, breathing smokescreen for something with numbers on it, something with signatures, something that cleared on Monday. The word port went through the room like a current. Half these guests, Mireille realized, watching their faces change, were here for the port. Junseok's 40 names, the men he'd worked at the bar, the papers that were good for it. Junseok's easy face was gone. "That's doctored," he said, too fast. "That's cut together. My voice, my mother's, spliced." "By who?" Mireille turned toward him. "You want to explain to this room who'd bother splicing a fake tape about a real port deal that clears in 2 days? You want the auditors to hear you ask that question out loud?" Because that was the thing she'd finally understood, sitting in the back of the sedan with the mansion shrinking in the mirror. The tablet wasn't hers. It wasn't the family's. It wasn't staff. A stranger had left a recorder running in that gallery at 2:47 in the afternoon, aimed at exactly this conversation. Someone had already been hunting the Kang port accounts from the inside. She'd only found the net that someone else had cast. And she saw the terracotta dress move at the edge of the room. The woman with the leather portfolio hadn't left with the other guests. She'd stayed against the far wall through the whole toast, and now she came off it, unhurried, opening the portfolio as she walked. And every step said she'd been waiting all night for someone to play that tape so she wouldn't have to. Junseok saw her too. Whatever color was left in his face went with it. "You," he said. "Evelyn Price." She said it to the room, not to him, in the flat voice of a woman reading a finding. "Independent audit. I've had a hold on the port transfers since Tuesday." She looked at the phone in Morel's hand, then at Morel, and something almost like respect crossed her face. "I lost a recorder in this house this afternoon. I've spent the evening wondering who had it." A small nod. "You had it." "It found me," Morel said. "In a laundry cart, on a dead battery, in a vestibule 6 feet from where you lost it. Your family moved it up 2 floors without knowing what it was. Your family kept it charged just long enough." She almost smiled and didn't. "Your family did most of the work." Price's eyes moved over her once, the emerald vest, the steadiness, the phone. "Your staff." "Head of staff," Morel said. "For 2 more minutes anyway. Then you've saved me a subpoena." Price turned to Junseok. "Those signatures aren't landing Monday. They're not landing at all. As of an hour ago, the accounts are frozen pending review. And after tonight," she glanced at the 200 witnesses, at the phones that had come up all over the room, dozens of them, recording the recording. "After tonight, I'd say review is the least of it." Junseok's hand went inside his jacket. Not for a weapon, for a phone. He was already turning away, already dialing, already moving toward the service arch with his thumb flying across the screen, and Mireille understood with a cold drop in her stomach exactly who he was calling and what he was telling them to do. Because a man like Junseok didn't keep the only copy of anything, and he didn't leave the only record of anything, and the port paperwork lived somewhere on a server, and the audio proof lived on 3 phones, and he had just realized both of those facts in the same second. "Duyun?" Mireille said. The doors. Duyun was already moving, but Junseok was through the arch, phone to his ear, and Mireille caught 2 words as the door swung shut behind him. 2 words in a voice stripped of every easy thing it had carried all night. "Wipe everything." The door clicked. The ballroom erupted. 200 people talking at once, chairs scraping, the band members standing up with their instruments still in their hands, Price already on her own phone speaking fast and low, Sun-hee gripping the edge of the table with both hands and staring at the empty arch where her younger son had gone. Sun-hee had gone very still. Mireille watched her, because she wanted to see it, the exact moment. On the tape, her younger son had called her mother and told her the woman was cover and told her a week was all he needed, and Sun-hee had said, "She's a person." And then she had done it anyway. She'd ordered the brooch planted anyway. Mireille had spent the drive across the bridge deciding what that meant, and she still didn't know. Chantage, or choice. A mother cornered by a son, or a woman who'd made the son. The tape didn't say. The tape only proved she'd said yes. But Sun-hee wasn't looking at the crowd, and she wasn't looking at Mireille. She was looking at the empty arch where Junseok had gone, and her face, for the first time in 2 years, showed Mireille something that wasn't contempt. It was calculation. The same calculation Mireille had watched cross Minjae's face under the chandelier that morning. A person doing a sum they were afraid to finish. Mother and both sons, the same arithmetic, running in 3 different directions. He used your voice, Mireille said to her, low, meant only for the 2 of them. On his tape, on a stranger's tape. He put you on the record to cover himself, and he'd have let me take the walk for it. She paused. How does it feel, being the one they hold up? Sun Hee's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. She reached up, slowly, and unpinned the brooch from her chest, and stood there holding the golden heron in her closed fist, as if it had turned hot, and that was the only answer she gave. And Mireille stood in the middle of it in her emerald vest, the phone still warm in her hand, 3 copies of the truth already loose in the world, and knew that everything Junseok couldn't reach tonight was safe, and everything he could was already dying under his thumb, somewhere below her feet. She looked at Minjae. He's going for the servers, she said. Minjae was already running. She caught him at the top of the service stairs. Not that way. Mireille grabbed his sleeve. Freight's faster, and he doesn't know Raphael's got the fob. He'll take the main stairs to the mezzanine and cut through the office wing. If we take Freight, we come up under him. Minjae stared at her. How do you? I've run this house for 2 years. She was already moving. You want to catch your brother, you catch him my way. Raphael was at the freight door before them, fob out, the car already waiting because he'd never let it go far all night. Loretta was there, and Do-yoon came pounding down the corridor with the radio squawking, 3 voices on it now, security men who didn't know whose orders to follow anymore. Server room's the old wine cellar, Raphael said, jamming the fob against the reader. Sub-basement. He put the racks where the temperature was already right. There's 1 door and it needs a card. Whose card? Mireille said. Raphael's jaw tightened. His. And mine. Maintenance holds a master. The freight lurched down. He said wipe everything, Mireille said into the small hot space. Loretta. The port files, the shell company, whatever's down there. It goes when he wipes it. The audio's safe. But everything that proves the deal isn't audio, it's on those drives. Then we get to the drives, Loretta said. Or we get to him before he gets to the drives, Minjae said. Mireille looked at her husband in the shaking light of the freight car, this man who had failed her in a gallery 2 hours ago, and stood up for her in a ballroom 2 minutes ago, and was now riding down into his own family's basement to stop his own brother from burning the evidence, and she didn't know yet what any of it made him. Coward. Or the man. Maybe both. In the same night, in the same skin. There'd be time to decide. 2 years, Minjae said suddenly, into the noise of the machinery. You knew this house better than any of us the whole time. I married you and I still didn't know you'd walk into that room. You didn't ask. Mireille kept her eyes on the descending numbers. You managed me, same as your mother did, same as your brother's doing right now to whoever's on that phone. The car dropped past the ground floor. Everybody in your family manages people. I'm done being managed. He took that. He didn't flinch from it. Then tell me what you need. Get me to the door before he finishes. She braced a hand against the wall as the car slowed. After that, we'll see what you are. The freight car stopped. The doors opened on a corridor she'd never been allowed down, cold, humming with machines, and at the end of it, a single steel door stood open, where it should have been locked, blue light spilling out of it across the concrete, and inside, the sound of a man's hands moving fast over a keyboard. Raphael's arm shot across the doorway, holding them back. He pointed at the light. He mouthed one word. Running. Mireille looked at the strip of blue light and the shadow moving in it and the coat she'd left upstairs and the ring she'd left on the blotter, and she thought of Sun Hee's 2 fingers on the brooch and the word cover in Junseok's easy voice, and she stepped past Raphael's arm toward the door. Mireille, Minjae said. He can't wipe what's already gone, she said, without turning around. The question is, what's still there? And she put her hand flat on the cold steel and pushed. The door swung inward, and the cold rushed out to meet her. Junseok stood at the center rack with both hands on a keyboard, and he didn't turn when the light from the corridor cut across the floor. A green bar crawled left to right on the monitor above him. Under it, one word repeated in a column. Over and over, the same command entered and entered again. "You're late," he said, "by about 90 seconds. Mirel came in 3 steps. The floor hummed under her shoes. Raphael filled the doorway behind her, then Min-jae, then Do-yoon, and the little room shrank around all of them. "Stop typing," Min-jae said. "I'd love to." Junseok kept typing, but then it stops finishing, and I very much want it to finish. The green bar hit the right edge. It blinked. It started again from the left. Mirel read the screen over his shoulder, without stepping into his reach. Not a delete, a wipe, a pass that wrote noise over the drives and then wrote it again, so that nothing pulled off them later would mean anything. She'd seen Raphael run something like it on a dead laptop once, to sell the shell clean. This was the same tool, aimed at 10 years of the family's paper. "How many passes?" she said to Raphael, not to Junseok. 7, if he set it default. Raphael's jaw worked. "It's on pass 3. 4, Junseok corrected. "Pleasant. Do keep up." Min-jae moved. He got a hand on his brother's shoulder and Junseok let himself be turned halfway, still one hand trailing on the keys, and he smiled up at Min-jae like a man greeting him at a party. "Careful, Snowwolf," he said, the old nickname soft. "You pull me off this, and the auditor upstairs gets nothing but a frozen account and a rumor. You leave me on it, and in 4 minutes there's no port deal, no shell, no signatures, nothing for anyone to sign or seize. I'm cleaning your house. You should thank me. You're burning it down." Same thing, from inside. Junseok's free hand found the enter key again. Tapped it. The command stacked one more time in the column. You always confused the two. Mirel stopped listening to him. She looked at the racks instead. 3 tall cabinets, blue light bleeding through the vents, a nest of cable at the base, thick as a man's arm. She'd learned this house from its bones out. She knew where the water lines ran, and which breaker killed the east gallery, and how long the freight held on the fob. She did not know servers, but she knew that everything in this house ran on something Raphael could reach. "Raphael," she didn't raise her voice. "If the power drops right now, mid-pass, what happens to what's already on there?" Raphael's eyes came up. "Interrupt a write mid-pass." He stopped, started again. "The pass doesn't complete. What it already overwrote is gone. What it hasn't touched yet is still there, frozen where it sits. So the earlier a pass dies, the more survives." "Yeah." A breath. "Yeah, but I don't have a clean shutdown from in here. I'd have to pull it." Junseok's hand slammed flat on the enter key. 3 fast strikes, feeding the cue. Raphael went low and fast for the base of the rack. He got both hands into the cable nest and hauled, and the room's hum dropped a full octave, and one of the 3 cabinets went dark from the top down, like a building losing its floors. The monitor above Junseok froze on the green bar, stopped, mid-crawl, a third of the way across. Silence, except the 2 cabinets still breathing. Junseok looked at the dead screen. For the first time all night, the smile was gone from his face and nothing replaced it. "Pass 4, Mirel said. "You said 4, so 4 passes gone, and everything the 4th pass hadn't reached yet is sitting right there where you left it. You don't know what was on that array?" "No." She stepped closer now, because his hands were off the keys and flat at his sides. "But she does." A tilt of her head, up, toward the ceiling, toward the ballroom and the woman on the phone in it, the one you were racing. "She's had a hold on your transfers since Tuesday. She's not guessing what's on there. She has the other half already." Junseok's eyes went to Min-jae. Something passed between the brothers, fast, a whole childhood of it. Then Junseok laughed, quiet, almost fond. "Fine," he said, "fine. You want to do it the loud way." He pulled his phone out again, the same phone he'd said 2 words into, upstairs, and he thumbed it once and put it to his ear and turned his back on all of them, on his brother's hand still hovering, like none of them could touch him. "It's me," he said into it. Change of plan. The girl found the room. A pause. No, both of them, and the maid, and the maintenance one, and Choi. Another pause, and his voice dropped, and it stopped being a party voice. "You have all 3 files. You know what to do with them. Do it tonight. All of them." He hung up before anyone reached him. Do-yoon had gone very still in the doorway. Mirel saw it land on him first, the words. All 3 files. The words. Do it tonight. Saw the color leave a face that had held steady through a public confession an hour ago. His hand went to his chest, to the pocket where the child's drawing lived, a gesture so fast and so helpless that she understood the whole shape of it before he said a word. My daughter's at my sister's, Do-yoon said. Not to Jun-suk, to Mirel. In Flushing, he has the address. He has the... He stopped. That's what the files are, not evidence. People. He built one on each of us. What's in yours? Mirel said. Even, level, buying him a second to breathe. Immigration status. My sister's. His throat moved. She's the one keeping Jiwoo while I work nights. If it goes to the wrong desk tonight, she's on a plane Thursday, and my daughter's in a system. Raphael was already up off the floor. Mine's the shop, he said, flat. My cousin's shop. Liquor license, back taxes he doesn't actually owe, but Jun-suk's got paper says he does. 1 call, and there's a padlock on the door Monday, and 40 years of my uncle's work is. He didn't finish either. Loretta had come to the doorway sometime in the last minute. She stood with her arms folded and her chin up, and she said, And mine's my boy in the Bronx, isn't it? The one holding your recording. She said it to Jun-suk's back. You'd hurt a man for holding a phone. Jun-suk turned around. He looked at the 4 of them. 5, with Min-jae, and he spread his hands, empty now, the phone pocketed. I didn't do any of this, he said. I made 3 phone calls, a tax office, an immigration desk, a licensing board. Everything in those files is true. That's the beauty of it. I don't lie. I just tell the right true thing to the right board clerk at the right hour, and the machine does the rest, and none of it ever comes back to me. He smiled again, and it was worse than before. You can play your recording to 200 people. You can't unfile a form. The room held its breath, and Mireille felt the floor of the night drop out from under her. Felt, for the first time since she'd pulled the ring off the chain, that she had reached for a thing and closed her hand on nothing. She'd won the ballroom, she'd won it in front of everyone, and it hadn't mattered. He'd been 3 phone calls ahead the whole time, and the phone calls didn't care who clapped. Min-jae stepped between his brother and the door. Choi's daughter, he said. Raphael's cousin. Loretta's son, you call all 3 back, right now, in front of me. Or I stop being the brother who manages things. Min-jae's voice had gone quiet in a way Mirel had never heard from him. Not the boardroom quiet, not the party quiet. You know what I mean. I sat in the will reading same as you. I know what's in Father's safe. I've never used it. Try me tonight. For 1 second, the brothers stood a foot apart, and it could have gone anywhere. Then Do-yoon's radio crackled on his belt. A voice, upstairs, one of his own men. Boss, Ms. Price is asking where you are. And there's 2, hold on. There's 2 cars just pulled up the service lane, no plates, nobody's expecting deliveries. Everyone in the little cold room went still. That's fast, Jun-suk said, and now he was pleased again, because the fear had moved off his face and onto everyone else's. That's not for you. That's my ride and a few friends. I told you, tonight. He didn't run. He walked, past his brother, who did not stop him, because stopping him meant a fight in a doorway, with 3 civilians packed behind, and Jun-suk had counted on that too. He walked out into the cold corridor and toward the freight, and Raphael lunged for the fob in his own pocket and came up with nothing, because Jun-suk had lifted it off the ledge by the door on his way in, and none of them had seen his hand move. The freight doors closed on his gray shoulder and the little smile, and he was gone, up into the house. Stairs, Do-yoon barked, and was already moving. They came up into a different house. The ballroom Mireille had built that morning was breaking apart in real time. 200 people who had watched a recording play were now watching each other, and half of them were on their phones, and a knot of Jun-suk's 40 names had gathered near the coat check with their coats already on, and Evelyn Price stood on the 3rd stair of the grand staircase, like a woman holding a line she could not physically hold, one hand up, saying something none of them could hear over the noise. Jun-suk was not in the room. Service door, Loretta said, pointing, already knowing the house better than the guests. He'd never go out the front. Mireille ran the length of the ballroom she'd counted chairs in that morning, and hit the service corridor and the cold air of the open loading door, and she got there in time to see two dark cars pulling out of the service lane, unhurried, and a third set of taillights turning onto the street beyond the gate. He was in one of them. She couldn't have said which. She stood in the doorway, and the 12-degree air came in around her, and this time she felt every degree of it. Behind her, in the ballroom, the noise changed pitch, went sharper, thinner. She turned. Evelyn Price had made it down off the stairs and was crossing to her fast, phone still in her hand, and her analyst's calm had a crack running through it now. "They're gone," Price said. It wasn't a question. "He's gone." He said tonight. Mireille's mouth was dry. Choi's family, Ortiz's cousin, Loretta's son. He said he already made the calls. Price closed her eyes for 1 second, opened them. "Then we have hours, not days." She was moving even as she spoke, thumbing her phone. "I can freeze the port accounts. I did that Tuesday. I cannot unsend a tip to an immigration field office at 11 at night. That's a different building. Different people. People I don't control." She looked at Mireille, and for the first time the auditor looked at her like an equal and not like a witness. "Whatever's on that half-wiped array, I need it in a locked chain of custody before the sun comes up, or half of it walks the same way he did. Can your maintenance man pull those drives without cooking them? His name is Rafael Ortiz." Price blinked. "Rafael Ortiz," she said. "Can he pull the drives?" "Yes." "Then send him down. I'll give him a case number and a witness so nobody can say we touched anything." Price was already turning away, already back on the phone. "And find your—" She stopped, glanced at the ballroom, at the son of the house standing pale by the empty stairs. "Find Mr. Kang, the older one. I need the account holder to authorize the account he's the holder of, or my hold doesn't survive a lawyer past Monday." She was gone into the crowd. Mireille stood alone in the middle of the room she'd made, for one breath. Then she went to find her husband. She found him in the East Gallery. Of course she did. He'd gone to the one room in the house where this had all started, and he was standing in front of the empty velvet case with his phone pressed to his ear, and he was not talking to Evelyn Price. Mireille stopped in the doorway. She heard the last of it before he saw her. She heard him say, low, controlled, the boardroom voice back on like a coat, "No, listen to me. It's the cleanest way. He runs, I don't chase. The name stays out of court, the family name. I step down from the board tomorrow, quietly, health reasons. And yes, the marriage. We announce a separation. It never has to come out that it was ever anything but an employment matter that got personal. It protects everyone. It protects her." Mireille didn't move from the doorway. Min-jae turned and saw her, and his face did a thing she would remember. A flinch, then a smoothing over, the smoothing worse than the flinch. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, and lowered it. "Say the rest of it," Mireille said. "Mireille, you were on the phone with a lawyer." Her voice came out steady, and it surprised her. "Not her lawyer. Yours. The family's. You're going to step down quietly, so there's no hearing. And you're going to announce that we're separating so that the 12 months never happened, so that I go back to being an employment matter that got personal." She let it sit. "Say if I'm wrong." He didn't say she was wrong. He set the phone face down on the velvet case, on the empty square where the brooch had been, and the small, deliberate care of that gesture told her everything the phone call hadn't. "It ends this tonight," he said. "No court, no years of it, no photographers outside your mother's." He stopped. "Start it over. No cameras following you into a courthouse for 2 years. You've seen what this family does to the people it drags through the light. I'm trying to keep you out of the light. You made a deal about my marriage, each word its own, about my name, with a lawyer, and you were going to tell me after." "I was going to tell you." "When? After the press release?" "Mireille, you did it again." She heard her own voice drop, go quiet, and the quiet frightened her more than shouting would have. "In the gallery, the first time, you managed it. You said a few hours. You said, let's not call anyone yet. And tonight I stood in that ballroom and made it so you'd never have to manage me again. And you came up here and you managed me again. About the one thing that's mine, my marriage. You gave it away on the phone to save the family a headline. That's save. You. Don't," the word cut. Don't tell me what you did to me was for me. Your brother said that. Your mother said that. Everyone in this house who ever put a hand on my life said they did it for me. She took one step into the room. I found the tablet. I found the recording. I made 3 copies and I carried it back into this house, and I played it in front of 200 people. Not you, me. And the first quiet minute you got, you sold the ending to a lawyer without asking the one person it belongs to. Min-jae's hand came up, open, toward her. The lawyer isn't signed, nothing's signed. I can… No. She stepped back from the open hand. You don't get to unsay it and have it not count. I've watched your family unsay things all night. Your mother recolored it, your brother refiled it. I'm done with people telling me a thing didn't mean what it plainly meant. The gallery was very quiet. Somewhere below them, the ballroom churned. Down in the sub-basement, drives were cooling in a case with a number on it. In 3 boroughs, 3 phones might already be ringing in 3 offices that opened at 9. Mireille reached into the pocket of the green vest, the vest she had put back on tonight by choice, and she took out the cheap phone, Loretta's second phone, the recording still on it. Here's what happens now, she said. You're going to go downstairs, and you're going to authorize whatever Evelyn Price puts in front of you, because you're the account holder, and she needs your name, and it's the one useful thing you can do tonight. And then you're going to stay out of my way. Mireille, please. I'm not handing this to the family lawyer. She held the phone up between them, screen dark, and it was the smallest object in the room, and it stopped him cold. I'm handing it to mine, somebody who works for me, and not for the name Kang. Somebody who's going to make sure that when this goes to the board and to a courtroom and to whatever field office your brother called tonight, it goes with my name on it. Whole, not separated, not a health reasons resignation, not an employment matter that got personal. Her hand was steady. The truth, at full volume, with the marriage in it. If it drags me through the light, then I'll walk through the light on my own 2 feet, in my own name, married. Not managed out the side door to keep your mother's picture in the paper. She lowered the phone. You had a chance to be the man tonight, she said. You were, for 4 minutes in the ballroom, and then you came up here and you were the other thing again. Min-jae stood in front of the empty case where his family's whole history had sat behind glass, and he had nothing. For the first time all night, the man who ran rooms had no version of the sentence that would land. Go authorize the account, Mireille said. Miss Price is waiting. And she turned and walked out of the gallery, and she did not look to see whether he followed, because whether he followed was no longer the question that ran her. Loretta was in the service corridor with her cardigan buttoned wrong, and her son's number already dialed, the phone against her ear, and the ring going and going. He's not picking up, she said when Mireille reached her. Her firmness had a hairline in it now. It's late, but he'd pick up for me. He always picks up for me. He's asleep. Mireille put a hand on her arm and kept her voice level, because one of them had to. It's after 11. Jun-seok made a call to a tax office. Loretta, nobody's kicking a door in tonight over back taxes. The worst of it moves at office hours. We have until 9. And Do-Yoon's girl? The hand on Loretta's arm tightened before Mireille could stop it. That one's faster, she admitted. That one I don't know. She found Do-Yoon in the security office off the ballroom, and he was not managing anything. He had a phone in each hand, his own and the desk line, and he was talking to his sister in Flushing in fast, low Korean, telling her, Mireille understood without the words, to take Ji-woo and go somewhere tonight. Go to a friend. Don't be at the address on the file. Just for a few days. Please, don't ask, please. He hung up the desk line and looked at Mireille, and his face was the face of a man who had bet everything on the truth an hour ago and was now watching the house try to charge him for it. You told me you wouldn't burn me, he said. Not an accusation. A man checking a rope before he put his weight on it again. I'm not going to. She meant it, and she made him hear that she meant it. Ms. Price has a case number. Your testimony is inside a legal hold now, not a family favor. That's the difference between tonight and this afternoon. This afternoon your daughter was leverage, and now she's a protected witness's kid. It's not nothing. It's a wall between her and them that wasn't there at 2 o'clock. She held his eyes. But I won't lie to you. Your brother-in-law needs to move your sister tonight, and I can't promise the wall holds till morning. I can promise I'm not going home until it does. Doyeon looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once, the way he'd nodded when he first mentioned the rounds being clean at 9:05, a man putting a fact on the record before it was safe to. He took the freight fob, Doyeon said. Ortiz is downstairs pulling drives by flashlight. Ms. Price is standing over him with a witness like he told her to. The two cars that came up the lane, my man got a partial on one, before the plate light went out. It's logged. He almost smiled. It didn't reach. Everything's logged now. I made sure. After today I log everything. Good. Mireille pressed his shoulder once and let go. Keep logging. She walked back out into the ballroom. It was emptying now, the 200 thinning to 100, coats moving toward the door, phones still up, the night already being uploaded to a dozen accounts. Evelyn Price stood by the base of the staircase, with Raphael beside her, and Raphael had a static-lined case in his arms, and a look on his face like a man carrying a live thing. Min-jae stood a few feet from them, phone in hand, and even at this distance Mireille could see he was signing something. Thumbprint, screen, whatever Price had put in front of him. Doing the one useful thing. Late, but doing it. Mireille stopped in the middle of the marble. She took out her own phone, her real one, not Loretta's, and she scrolled to a number she'd kept for 2 years and never called. A woman she'd met once, at a service entrance of another house, another job, a lawyer who'd handed her a card and said, "If the family you work for ever makes you disappear, call me before you agree to anything." She'd kept the card in the zip pocket. She'd never zipped it open. She opened it now. The line rang twice. A voice, awake, sharp even at this hour. The voice of a woman who kept a phone by the bed for exactly this. "This is Sutton," Mireille said. "Mireille Sutton, you gave me your card 2 years ago. You said call, before I agree to anything." She watched. Across the ballroom, her husband hand Evelyn Price back her tablet, and turn and look for her in the crowd and find her. She held his eyes, and she kept talking into the phone. "I haven't agreed to anything. And I've got a recording, 3 copies, a legal hold, and a family that just tried to file my whole life into a drawer tonight. I need you here before 9 a.m. How fast can you get to the Kang house?" Across the room, Min-jae started toward her. The lawyer said something. Mireille listened. "No," she said. "Don't come to the service door. Come to the front." And she lowered the phone, and she watched her husband cross the last of the marble toward her, and behind him the great doors of the house stood open on the cold, waiting to see who walked through them next. Min-jae stopped an arm's length from her and put something on the marble between them. Not a word first. The phone. He set it face up on the floor at her feet, the screen still lit with the family lawyer's number, and then he crouched and pressed his thumb to the red circle and ended the call while she watched. "It's canceled," he said, saying it isn't canceling it. "Then watch." He stood, lifted the phone again, and dialed a different number in front of her, slow enough that she could read every digit. Evelyn Price's card had passed between them an hour ago. He'd kept it. He put the call on speaker so the marble could hear it. "Ms. Price, Kang Min-jae, I'm giving the auditors everything. Family drives, the port accounts, my father's files, the board minutes going back 4 years. Full access. Independent. Tonight." A pause on the line. Then Price's voice, flat and awake. "You understand that includes accounts in your own name?" "Yes, and your mother's." A longer pause than the first. "Yes." He lowered the phone. He did that one thing without looking away from her, which was new. "That's the wall," Mireille said. "Not the story you were going to tell about me. That." "I know the difference now." "Since when?" "Since I went up to that office and found a ring on a blotter and a green vest folded next to it and no wife." His jaw worked. "You didn't leave me a note. You left me the 2 things I gave you and walked out in your own shirt." "I've been reading that note all night." She let that sit. Behind him, the front doors still stood open on the cold, and the last of the guests were feeding themselves into black cars, and somewhere in the emptying room, a caterer was stacking chairs because no one had told her to stop. "The auditors don't fix the phone calls," Mireille said. "Doyoon's sister, Raphael's cousin, Loretta's boy. Your brother made 3 calls that don't care what Price freezes. Then we make 3 calls back." "We," she said. "I'll dial." You decide who. Evelyn Price came across the marble with her coat already on and a case in her hand that hadn't been there before. Raphael walked 2 steps behind her, carrying the static bag with the drives, and a stranger walked behind Raphael, a young woman with a notary stamp and a laptop bag, the witness Price had summoned out of the dark. The array's semi-wiped but coherent, Price said, no greeting. 4 passes lost. Everything past a third of the disk survived because someone killed the power at the right second. Her eyes moved to Raphael. He pulled it clean. Chain of custody is logged, time-stamped, sealed. I have the port ledger against these drives, and the 2 halves say the same thing. She set the case down. The shells are real. The signatures were queued for Monday. They're not clearing Monday. That's the money, Mirel said. I need the people. Price's mouth thinned. The people are harder. I froze accounts. I can't unsend a tip to an immigration desk. That's a different building and a different clock. Then give me the clock. 9 a.m. The desks open at 9. Price looked at her the way she'd looked at the room all night, doing arithmetic in her head. Whatever you're going to do, it has to be done as a matter of record before those windows open, or it isn't done. A rumor at 8:59 is still a rumor. Mireille turned to Do-yoon, who had come up the service stairs and stood at the edge of the marble like a man who wasn't sure the floor was his to walk on. Your partner logged a partial plate. 2 of them. He pulled out his phone and it shook, just slightly, in his hand. 1 car, 3 characters, and a VIN off a windshield when the valet moved it earlier. I photograph every car that parks in the service lane, always have. Junsok's ride was one of ours until 3 weeks ago. It's leased to a shell. He looked at Price. Same list? Price took his phone, scrolled, and something changed in her face. Same list. This car is registered to Harborline Freight Solutions. That's shell number 2. She looked up. He fled in a vehicle owned by the crime. So he's carrying his own evidence, Mirel said. He's driving it. The lawyer arrived at 6:40 in the morning through the front door, because Mirel had told her to. And the household staff who had spent all night whispering about the woman with the bare shoulders now watched a black woman in a good coat walk across the Kang marble like she'd bought it. Her name was Adayeze Okafor, and she had 2 associates and a rolling cart of files, and she did not lower her voice for anyone. Sit, Okafor said to Mirel, and Mirel almost laughed, because it was the first order she'd taken in 8 hours. I don't have until 9 to be careful, Mirel said. Do-yoon's sister is at an address that's about to get a knock. Raphael's cousin loses a liquor license Monday. Loretta's son is a name on a list a man read into a phone at midnight. Then we don't play defense on 3 fronts. Okafor set a legal pad on the marble and uncapped a pen. We put the whole thing in front of one body that can move fast enough to matter, and we make the 3 calls collapse into it. She looked up. You have a board. A board that answers to a chair who ordered a brooch planted in my pocket. A board, Okafor repeated, that meets in emergency session when a majority owner calls one. And by 9 this morning, the majority owner is going to be a very frightened man who wants to look clean. She glanced at Min Jae, standing back, hands open at his sides, waiting to be told where to stand. Is he going to call it? Ask him. I'm calling it, Min Jae said. The board convened at 8 in the long dining room because it was the only table left standing after the gala. 9 chairs, 7 filled. 2 of Junsok's 40 names had turned out to be directors, and one of them was the man with the gold watch Evelyn Price had sat back down the night before, and he arrived looking like he hadn't slept and left his coat on. Mireille did not sit at the table. She stood at the head of it, where the servers usually stood, and she had the green vest on, because she had put it on that morning by choice, and she laid out the case the way she laid out a floor plan, in the order a person walks through a room. She started with the schedules. Every shift in this house is logged, she said, and Do-yoon set a binder on the table and opened it. Who's on the floor? Who's on the doors? Who's in the cellar? The night the first shell account was opened, the security log shows a man badged into the old wine cellar at 2 in the morning who wasn't on any shift. That badge belongs to a guard who was in Flushing that night, at a hospital, with his daughter. I have the hospital record. The badge was cloned. Cloned by whom? Said the man with the gold watch. Too fast. I'll get there. She turned a page. The laundry manifests. Linens move through this house on a clock. Carts go up at 5, down at 11, logged by weight. 3 weeks of manifests show a cart making an unscheduled trip to the second-floor service vestibule outside the East Gallery. Same vestibule where an audio device was left the afternoon of the gala. She let that hang. Someone was using the service routes of this house, the routes I run, to move things that had nothing to do with linen. Raphael, at the wall, didn't move, but his chin came up. The maintenance orders. She nodded, and Raphael brought the tablet. Every repair in this house generates a ticket. For 6 months there's a repair that keeps coming back. The freight elevator, the one with the master fob. Fixed, breaks, fixed, breaks. Except the maintenance logs show the fob was checked out on nights when there was no repair. Checked out to a credential that matches nothing in the staff roster. She looked at the gold watch. It matches a cloned maintenance master. The same clone that opened the wine cellar door. "This is a lot of paper about doors," the man said. "It's a lot of paper about how a man robs his own family without ever touching it himself," Mireille said. He didn't do the work. He read the truth to the right clerk. He cloned the credentials of the people who'd take the fall. A guard, a maintenance man, a supervisor. She put her hand flat on the binder. Me. That was when Sun Hee spoke. She had come down in the champagne dress from the night before, unchanged, unslept, the pearls still at her throat, and she had taken a chair at the far end of the table without being offered one, and for 40 minutes she had watched Mireille build the room like a floor plan. Now she set the brooch on the table, the golden heron. The ruby caught the morning off the windows and threw a red coin onto the ceiling, the way it had thrown red the night it came out of Mireille's pocket. "Stop," Sun Hee said. "You're building a case that he acted alone." Her voice was steady in the way a wall is steady right before it isn't. "He didn't." The room went still. "I helped him make the first 2 companies," Sun Hee said. "Harbor Line. And the other one, the freight name. I signed as a director under a name that isn't on my passport. I did it 2 years ago, before he ever cloned a badge, because he came to me and said the family was cash poor against the port bid, and the honest way would take a decade." Her hands were folded on the table, refined, still. "He didn't blackmail me into that. That came later, the badges, the girl in the pocket, the beginning I chose." Mireille had known. She'd deduced it in a cold car with a dead tablet in her hand, that a woman that's certain doesn't get led. She leads, and calls it being led. But hearing it was not the same as knowing it. She watched the old woman say the thing that cost her the most, which was not the crime, but the choice. Loretta, by the wall, made a small sound and pressed her lips together. 11 years she'd carried this woman's tea trays and moved her reception lines into bad light on command. She said nothing. She just looked at Sun Hee the way you look at weather that finally admits what it did to the crops. "Why the brooch?" Mireille said. "Why me?" "Because you were the one thing in this house he couldn't buy or clone." Sun Hee looked at her, and there was no cruelty left in it, only accounting. "You ran the floor like you owned it. The auditors were going to come. He needed a face for them to chase for a week, a face they'd believe, a servant with access, a story that writes itself." A pause. "I gave him yours. I told myself it was only a week. I told myself you'd be dismissed, not destroyed." Her eyes went to the brooch. "I put it in your pocket in my own words. That's on the recording. I don't ask you to soften it." "I won't," Mireille said. "I know." Sun Hee almost smiled. "That's why he chose you and why he lost." Okafor moved then, fast, because a confession is only evidence if someone catches it in a jar. She had the notary at the door within 90 seconds, and Sun Hee signed a statement with the same steady hand she'd used to sign a director's name that wasn't hers. And the board watched a matriarch put her own name to her own ruin, and the man with the gold watch stood up to leave, and found Choi Do-yoon standing in front of the door. "Sit down, sir," Do-yoon said. "Quiet." The first order he'd given all night that he wasn't afraid to give. "You're a director. This is a meeting. You leave when it's called." The man sat. Evelyn Price took the floor without being invited to it. She put the drives on the table beside the brooch, and the 2 objects sat there, the gold bird and the black case, the old theft and the new one. "The array corroborates every document she just described," Price said. "Schedules, manifests, maintenance logs, cloned credentials, They map one-to-one to the transfers queued against the port accounts. I've had a hold on those transfers since Tuesday. As of this morning, that hold is permanent, pending referral. She looked around the table. The signatures do not clear Monday. They do not clear at all. The shells are frozen. The accounts they draw from are frozen. Her eyes found the gold watch, including 3 that are in this room. The man's face did a thing men's faces do when the floor they were standing on turns out to be someone else's. Now, Okafor said, and slid a single page to the center of the table. The vote. It was not a dramatic vote. That was the thing Mireille would remember. That the end of it was paperwork. The resolution was 3 sentences long. It removed Kang Jun-suk from the board and from every officership he held. It referred the port accounts and the shell companies to the auditors and to the authorities. It suspended Park Sun-hee's chair pending the outcome of her own statement, which she had just signed. 7 directors, 2 of them Jun-suk's. The gold watch voted no, and so did the empty-eyed man beside him, and then the vote went around the rest of the table, and it did not matter, because 5 was more than 2, and Min-jae voted last and voted yes on the removal of his own brother and the suspension of his own mother, and set the pen down, and looked at no one for approval. Carried, Okafor said. And in the middle of the paperwork the phone started. Do-yoon's rang first. He stepped to the window to take it, and Mireille watched his shoulders, which had been up around his ears for 2 days, come down. He listened. He said something in Korean, short, and then he pressed the phone to his chest for a second, before he turned around. My sister, he said. Ji-woo's with her. Nobody came. He looked at Okafor. Your associate. She called the field office at 7 and put a lawyer's name and a case number on the file before the desk opened. The tip's flagged as part of a fraud referral now. It doesn't move on its own anymore. His voice cracked on the last of it and he didn't apologize for it. Somebody's watching the account instead of my sister's door. That's the wall, Mireille said. You're inside it. Raphael's phone was next. He didn't step away for his. He put it on speaker in the middle of the room, defiant, and his cousin's voice filled the dining room in fast, bright English. The license board had called, but not to padlock anything. A lawyer had gotten there first, with paper showing the tax claim was fabricated, filed by a person who was now himself under referral. They said Monday's off the table, the cousin said. They said somebody vouched. Who vouched? Raphael looked at Mireille, and then at Okafor, and then at the green vest at the head of the table. The whole room, Primo, he said. Go back to sleep. Loretta didn't wait for her phone. She'd called the Bronx at 6, and her boy had answered on the first ring, awake, the copy of the audio still on his phone, no one at his door, and she'd sat down in a caterer's folding chair and put her face in her hands for exactly 10 seconds, and then stood back up and buttoned her cardigan correctly, for the first time in 2 days. 3 calls back for 3 calls out. The machine Jun-suk had built ran on the truth reaching the right clerk at the right time. Mireille had simply reached them first. Jun-suk they got at 9:10, and Mireille wasn't there for it, which she decided later was right. He was stopped 40 miles up the interstate in a car registered to Harborline Freight Solutions. His own shell, his own name 3 layers down, the vehicle that was itself an exhibit. Do-yoon's partial plate and the VIN off the windshield had gone to Price at 2 in the morning, and from Price into the referral, and a car that belongs to a frozen shell company is a car that gets flagged the moment it passes a plate reader. He had fled in the evidence. He had driven, for 6 hours, inside the crime. The call came to Min-jae. He took it in the dining room, on speaker, because Mireille had told him a family that hides its phone calls is the family she left. He listened. He said, I understand, twice. He set the phone down. They have him, he said. The accounts are seized, both cars. The freight fob was in the glove box. He looked at his mother, who had not moved from her chair. He was still trying to wipe a phone when they opened the door. He didn't get to finish that one either. Sun-hee closed her eyes. You can't unfile a form, Min-jae said, quiet, to no one. That's what he said last night. Turns out you can't outdrive one either. The retraction was Sun-hee's idea, which surprised no one more than Mireille. She did it in front of what remained of the household staff and the 2 directors who hadn't fled, and the auditor and the lawyer, in the same east gallery where the vitrine still stood empty, and she did it standing, in the champagne dress, with the brooch in her open hand instead of pinned to her chest. "I called this woman a thief in this house, son," he said, and she looked at Morel and did not look away, which was its own kind of confession. "In front of my guests, I said she should pay. I knew, when I said it, that I had put the thing in her pocket myself." Her chin was level. "There is no soft way to say what I am, so I'll say the hard one. I am the thief. She is not, and never was." And I made sure the whole room saw the opposite of the truth. She held the brooch out, flat on her palm. "This crossed 300 kilometers in a coat lining because my great-grandmother chose what to carry. I forgot what it was for. It was never for making servants smaller. She set it on the velvet in the empty vitrine and did not close the case. I'll answer for the rest where I'm told to answer." She walked out with her back straight, which was the only thing she had left to walk out with, and no one stopped her, and it was not forgiveness, and it was not meant to be. They offered Mireille the directorship in the afternoon, when the house had gone quiet and the caterers were finally gone, and Okafor had stacked her cart of files by the door. It was Minjay who said it, but he said it in front of the two remaining directors and the auditor, in the open, on the record, the way she'd taught him, in the space of one night, to do everything now. The board needs an operations director, someone who knows how this house actually runs, the schedules, the routes, the credentials, all the things that just took my brother down. He didn't reach for her hand. He'd learned that too. The vote's yours to accept or refuse, not mine to give and not mine to take back. Mireille let the room wait. "On conditions," she said. "Name them. Doyen keeps his job, and his hours are cleaned up on paper by end of week. Because the paper was always the lie, not him. Raphael's cousin gets a letter from this family's council confirming the tax claim was fraud, so no clerk ever pulls it out of a drawer again. Loretta doesn't move linens for anyone who talks down to her, ever, and her son's name comes off every list it was put on. She counted them on the table, one finger each, the way she counted chairs. And the audit finishes, all of it, even the parts with your name on them, even the parts with hers." "Done," Minjay said. "All of it." The Gold Watch director opened his mouth, and Okafor set her pen down with a click that stopped him. "Every one of those conditions protects a witness in a live referral," she said. "Fight them, and you fight the audit. I'd advise against it in a room this well documented." He closed his mouth. "Then yes." She took the ring back that evening, and she did it herself, which was the whole point of it. It was still on the blotter in the governance office where she'd left it twice, flat, refusing to be carried. She went up alone. Minjay waited at the bottom of the service stairs because she'd told him to, and for once he did the waiting without managing it into something else. She picked the ring up. She didn't put it on the chain. The chain had been for hiding, and she was done hiding it in a house that now knew her name in full. She slid it onto her hand, where it caught the last of the light through the window, and then she went down the stairs and found her husband where she'd left him, which was, she noticed, exactly where she'd put him. "It's on my hand," she said. "Not on a chain, not in a pocket. My hand, in this house, where everyone can see it. That's the condition." "I can live inside that condition," Minjay said. "You'll stand next to me," she said, "not in front." "You had the whole night to stand in front, and you managed me instead. That job's closed." She looked at him, level, the green vest still on because she'd chosen it that morning and hadn't taken it off. "Next to me. When I run the room, you carry chairs like everybody else." He almost smiled. "I don't know where the extra chairs are kept." "Table 14, she said. "Overflow. I'll show you once." She turned and walked back into the house that had tried to file her away, and it did not swallow her, and she did not disappear into it. She walked through the middle of the marble floor, in the vest she'd put on by choice, with the ring on her open hand, and the great doors stood open behind her on a cold morning that she felt. All of it, every degree, because she was, for the first time in 2 years, entirely present in her own name. The brooch went back in its case, the girl in Flushing slept, and the woman they'd tried to make small walked the floor she now ran, and never once looked back to see if anyone was following. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been the one who kept every detail running, only to be treated as invisible the moment something went wrong? Have you ever been handed the blame for a crime someone powerful chose to pin on you? And when the truth was finally in your hands, did you have the courage to make them hear it? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and justice, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.